Chapter 188. No matter how embarrassing it was, he still had to go out. That was because Naruto was hungry. He then used the excuse of helping Kakashi reforge White Fang to hide in the Woodleaf Village's boiler room. But when the 5 girls learned that Naruto was going to reforge a sword, they all came to the countryside as well. The Sakuragi sisters' reason was that they wanted to be Naruto's assistants, while the other 3 confidently wanted to watch the fun. Naruto felt like his liver was in pain. Then, he had to make a tool based on White Fang's original appearance. Naruto's so-called reconnecting the broken sword was actually melting it down and reforging it. He wondered how Kakashi would feel if he found out. White Fang's sword was one of the few things that his father had left him. Melting it down and reforging it. In a way, it was no different from going to the store and buying a new sword of the same style. From a practical standpoint, buying a new sword was obviously better, but from a nostalgic standpoint, it wasn't even the same thing anymore, so what was there to miss? It's done. Once the mold is done, I'll definitely create an identical, short sword. Naruto felt that a 30-centimeter short sword couldn't be considered a sword at all, even though swords and swords were the same in this world, apart from a kitchen knife, a nail clipper. After the sword blank was completed, melting, breaking down, adding materials, recalculating the proportions, forging the alloy, casting, preventing the living steel from regenerating, polishing the blade, and removing the living steel. Not satisfied? Was it damaged? Melting it down to reforge the living steel. And so he went through the entire process, until his treasured sword was created. Naruto was quite satisfied with the White Fang that he created in 7 days. He felt that it was slightly inferior to his Izuka sword, but because the materials were amazing, Naruto finally created a White Fang that he was satisfied with regardless of the cost. But in reality, this sword was melted down 5 times. In other words, most of the original materials had become slag in the furnace. 99% of the materials were added later. The final 0.1% was the name of White Fang. In the end, only the hilt and the casing of the sword were original. When Naruto worriedly inserted the saber into the hilt, he was just like a newly married groom. The groom was afraid that he would not encounter any obstacles, but Naruto was worried that he would not be able to insert the saber. Therefore, the moment he inserted it, Naruto was greatly satisfied. She said proudly to the Sakuragi sisters beside her, "How is it? Is the saber the same as before after it is closed?" The Sakuragi sisters were perhaps the only people in the world who still stood on Naruto's side. Natsuya Sakuragi said, Sister, Master is amazing. This sword is exactly the same as before." Haru Sakuratani said, Little sister, Master is indeed amazing. This sword looks exactly the same." The 2 of them interlocked their fingers and blinked at Naruto with their faces close to each other. Guenai, who was watching from the side, pfft. Big Guni followed closely behind. Pfft. Little Guni looked up at the sky. Naruto ignored Big Guni and Guni's mockery. He placed his hands on his hips and was indescribably proud of himself. Then he pulled out the saber. Why can't I pull out the saber? Exerting all his strength, his chakra burst out with 5 times the power. Crack! The scabbard cracked. Big Guni, Guenai, Little Guni could not help but laugh as he looked up at the sky. Naruto looked at the broken saber hilt and blinked. He asked the Sakuragi sisters, Store manager, do you have any remaining superglue in the store? Natsuya Sakuragi said obediently, Yes, I do. I'll go get it. Naruto thought for a moment and called Natsuya Sakuragi back. Forget it, I'll make a new scabbard. After the scabbard was made, Naruto realized that the scabbard and hilt did not match. Let's make a new hilt. After the new White Fang was made, Naruto said proudly, doesn't it look more handsome than the old White Fang? The Sakuragi sisters continued to pamper Naruto. Haru Sakuratani, Sister, the saber that Master made is more handsome than the old one. Natsuya Sakuragi, Sister, the saber that Master made is the most handsome. Naruto put his hands on his hips and named it. Let's call this saber Big White Fang. Big Guni, Little Guni, and Big Gunny looked at each other. That day, Naruto tiptoed over to Heini Fujisuki. "Sensei Hwayu, I need your help." Heini Fujisuki looked at the sneaky Naruto in confusion. Then, she looked around and whispered, "What's Heini Fujisuki?" Naruto waved his hand. "That's not important. Give this to Kakashi and tell him that this is his white fang. I've named it Big White Fang after it grows up." Heini Fujisuki took the 50-centimeter-long short sword from Naruto's hand. It was a little heavy, and the scabbard was completely black. However, the words, "Big White Fang," were scrawled on the sword hilt. Heini Fujisuki nodded and said, "Okay." Naruto reminded her, "Also, you have to praise this white fang in front of him." Heini Fujisuki blinked. "How?" Naruto rubbed his chin and said shamelessly, "You can praise how exquisite this saber is. Looking at it is like looking at your father." "Father? Why father?" Heini Fujisuki didn't quite understand, but this sentence was a little embarrassing. She asked hesitantly, "Is this sentence very important?" Naruto nodded solemnly. The value of Big White Fang could only be redeemed by Heini Fujisuki. Heini Fujisuki reluctantly agreed. "Then I still have to find Tsunade-ne-san to train with, so I'll be leaving first." Naruto slipped away as fast as he could. 5 minutes later, Heini Fujisuki brought Naruto's 50-centimeter-long, short sword that was as straight as a fire stick to Kakashi Hataki's ward. Kakashi saw the stick in Heini Fujisuki's hand and praised, "What a unique stick." Heini Fujisuki handed the Big White Fang to Kakashi with both hands and said, "Naruto told me to give this to you." Naruto? The bald dung beetle? The thing he sent? Suspicious. Could it be that there were 100,000 explosive talismans inside? Kakashi's gaze fell on the stick, and a sense of unease rose in his heart. Heini Fujisuki continued, "Naruto said that this is your white fang. It's now grown into Big White Fang." As she spoke, Heini Fujisuki turned the stick around, revealing the 3 crooked words, "Big White Fang," on the handle of the stick. Kakashi's eyes went blank. He stared at the stick in Heini Fujisuki's hand for 30 seconds. He said absent-mindedly, "Naruto said it's white fang?" Heini Fujisuki confirmed, "That's what Naruto said." Kakashi hesitantly took the fire stick. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart. Perhaps the fire stick was just a disguise, and the real white crow was inside. With this thought, Kakashi chuckled and muttered to himself, "Yep. That must be it. Naruto is truly too naughty." Then, he pulled it, and the gleaming blade slowly pulled open. Behind his head, the end of the blade was square. Kakashi felt as if his entire body was frozen. Kakashi wanted to throw the sword away, because when he saw the gleaming blade, it reminded him of Naruto's annoying bald head. Heini Fujisuki saw that Kakashi was in a daze, and thought of Naruto's request. She said, "Naruto told me to tell you that the workmanship of this sword is really good. He said that when you see it, you'll think of your father." "Father?" Kakashi trembled with anger. He asked in a low voice, "Where is Naruto right now?" Heini Fujisuki replied, "Naruto went to find Naruto-sama to cultivate." Naruto. Kakashi suddenly wanted to cry. He wanted to cry for his destroyed white fang. And himself. Should he take this fire stick to find Naruto? Kakashi threw the fire stick in his hand to the ground. The sword tip stabbed into the ground, but it was as if it had stabbed into tofu. The blade slid to the ground without any resistance, until the hilt was completely submerged. Kakashi was stunned, and so was Heini Fujisuki. This was the first time they had seen such a sharp sword. Kakashi bent down and pulled out the sword. It was gleaming brightly. "Actually, this sword looks pretty good." Heini Fujisuki nodded and praised, "Yep, the workmanship is exquisite. Just one look and you'll think of your father's sword." Kakashi's face darkened. If she didn't mention her father, they could still chat. Father? Which father? Naruto's father? He's her father. Chapter 189. On the cliff of the Woodleaf West River. Naruto stood near the top of the cliff. Chakra filled his whole body. He punched his foot, and 10 times the power of chakra erupted. With a loud bang, 3 cracks appeared where Naruto's fist hit, and the solid stone bed broke. The rock, which was larger than a small building, began to fall rapidly. Finally, with a splash, the rock fell into the river. The river was not deep, and half of the rock was still above the river. Naruto succeeded. It was indeed a 10-fold chakra outbreak, and the power was very clean and transparent. There was no sign of it being forced. Tsunade looked at the scene in front of her and felt a little emotional. How long did it take for her to increase her power from 5 times to 7 times? 1 year. That year was a year of war. Even when she was young, she killed many people. Then, how long did it take to increase her power from 7 times to 8 times? She still remembered the first punch she threw out in anger. That was why it was so unforgettable. What about 8 times to 9 times? That was after she learned the monstrous strength. With the resonance between chakra and the body, and with the constant understanding of the body. And from 9 times to 10 times. At that time, she was already a famous doctor. Tsunade-san, this is 10 times, right? Naruto came over excitedly. The expression on his face was like a dog that killed a mouse in front of the Cat King. This expression was indeed a little cheap, but it was quite likable. Tsunade rubbed Naruto's bald head and praised, "Not bad, it is indeed 10 times the power of chakra. I originally thought that it would take you a year or so to learn it, but I didn't expect it to only take 15 days. You really have to thank Kakashi for this." Naruto grinned and said, "I have helped Kakashi reconnect his father's broken sword, and optimized it." Tsunade liked Naruto's clear distinction between kindness and hatred. Perhaps this was the pure heart of a child? Tsunade praised him with satisfaction. "Good boy, then I'll start teaching you monster strength. You change the ordinary chakra into the yang attribute chakra, and hit chakra 10-fold burst." Naruto excitedly ran back to the edge of the cliff. He measured a spot that was about the same distance as before and smashed down with his fist. 10 times chakra's strength exploded. Boom! His fist smashed into the ground, and the stone surface under his feet shattered like glass. There were countless cracks that spread out in all directions like a spider web. Naruto wanted to find a foothold to jump out, but there was no intact rock under his feet. He missed his foothold and fell down with the rubble. Only a scream was left in the air. Tsunade watched calmly from the side. She had expected this scene when Naruto smashed his fist. The stone is shattered into powder. He shouldn't be hurt. It's just jumping off the cliff. As long as he doesn't choke to death from drinking water, he'll be fine. Tsunade muttered to herself. Then she suddenly thought of something. No. There was a huge rock that fell down before. Tsunade quickly came to the edge of the cliff. The huge rubble that fell before was very conspicuous on the riverbed. And Naruto was lying on the rock in a human shape. Face on the ground? Her good disciple won't have fractures all over his body, right? Just as Tsunade was about to go down to rescue him, bang! Naruto disappeared from the rock. Was it a clone? Tsunade looked down again and finally saw the inside of the cliff. In a blind spot, Naruto was pulling down a string. Naruto hugged the long ladder made of multiple shadow clones and shivered. That was close. Fortunately, I was quick-witted. When the body fell down and there was no foothold under his feet, he thought of using multiple shadow clones to save himself. He was indeed quick-witted. Tsunade nodded with satisfaction and breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. However, just as Tsunade was about to call Naruto up, part of the rock layer under the cliff under her feet trembled. Then the sound of cracking was incessant. Naruto, who was on the long ladder, widened his eyes and couldn't help but burst out in English. "Oh, no." 5 minutes later, Naruto stood on the cliff again, but he was a little dusty. "Tsunade-san, we can actually go to the ground to practice." Naruto felt a little guilty. Tsunade checked Naruto's body. After confirming that there wasn't even a scratch on his skin, she patted Naruto's head with satisfaction and said, I found that your strength improves the fastest in danger, so it's better to stay here. Naruto couldn't make an obedient expression this time, because his face was already twitching. Tsunade continued to comfort him, "It's okay, like falling down a cliff or something, you'll get used to it." The muscles on Naruto's face twitched even more, and his expression was distorted. He wanted to ask why he had to get used to it, but since it was the training arranged by Tsunade, he couldn't refute. Tsunade began to formally instruct him, "You did very well with the 10 times Yang attribute explosion just now. Try again, this time, at the moment when chakra explodes, gather all the chakra at one point on your fist and explode in an instant. During this period, there will be a very dangerous moment, which is the moment when you attack. Because all the chakra is gathered at one point on your fist, your body will be in an undefended state at this time." Undefended. Naruto gulped. Undefended on the cliff. Can it be more exciting? Naruto worriedly walked to the edge of the broken cliff. His face was full of confusion, and his footsteps were weak as if he was walking on thin ice. Tsunade watched from the side and muttered to herself, "Naruto's heart is not enough. How can this be? Monstrous strength is about momentum. Without momentum, the strength will be greatly reduced. If he turns hitting into a spoiled little fist hitting your chest, it will be funny." So Tsunade shouted to scare him, "Ah!" Naruto was so scared that his whole body trembled, and he kicked with all his strength. He shot into the sky like a monkey. What was even funnier was that Naruto shot into the sky and left the rock layer on the cliff. Below his feet was a bottomless abyss. Then, naturally, he fell with a cry of surprise. "I don't want to die. Naruto's voice echoed in her ears, and he plunged down. Tsunade hesitated whether to save him or not. It turned out that Naruto's potential was infinite in danger. So Tsunade felt that if she saved Naruto now, it would delay Naruto's cultivation. Tsunade looked down again. "Well, there's no need to worry about it now. It's too late to save him." She comforted herself. "It's okay. As long as he doesn't fall into a mud, I can still cure him." 5 minutes later, Naruto crawled back, trembling. The look of horror was still on his face. Tsunade asked curiously, "How did you save yourself just now?" Naruto gulped and replied, "I shot the wind attribute chakra down as much as possible." "Shot the wind attribute chakra down? How?" Tsunade asked curiously, "Demonstrate it." Naruto's body gathered chakra, and then shot it down. Because he was still a little frightened, his power was a little out of control. In addition, he opened 2 of the Hashiman Tonku in panic just now. So in the bursting wind attribute chakra, the Naruto rose into the air. Chirp! What a gigantic sky-scraping monkey! Then, there were screams of panic and fear. 5 minutes later, Naruto crawled back again trembling. Tsunade sighed, "This move is good. You can fly if you practice it well." Naruto turned on the vibration mode. Tsunade asked curiously, "With this move, falling from a high altitude is no problem at all to save your life. Why are you still so scared?" Naruto trembled and said incoherently, I'm afraid of heights." When Tsunade heard this, she thought of her own hematophobia. She asked tentatively, "Is it also a psychological barrier?" Naruto nodded. Tsunade's eyes lit up. "Didn't you tell me about the exposure therapy last time?" Naruto's brain crashed, and the vibration mode froze for a moment. A bad premonition emerged in his heart, and he subconsciously asked, Tsunade smiled and said, "You said hematophobia can be cured by looking at the blood more to overcome the psychological barrier, right? Then you can fly more." Fly more. Before Naruto could mentally prepare himself, Tsunade suddenly grabbed him and threw him into the sky. Go. Naruto rose into the air again. Help, When did he start to be afraid of heights? Naruto remembered that he had been on an airship when he was doing the Snow Country mission. Well, at that time, because his body was attached to the surface of the airship, he didn't look down. So, had he always been afraid of heights? But, was this duo Fei treatment method reliable? Naruto successfully landed in a thrilling situation. Naruto rose into the air again. Throughout the day, the sky above the West River had been filled with screams, echoing in the empty valley. Chapter 190. Overcoming the fear of heights was a sudden lesson that Tsunade gave Naruto. On the 5th day, she finally succeeded. Naruto was calmly thrown into the air and then landed steadily. To be able to be so calm, who knows what he experienced in the past 5 days. But it did prove that the exposure method was effective. At the same time, it made Tsunade think about using exposure method to treat her blood phobia, and the supervisor was determined to be Naruto, who was tortured for 5 days. Tsunade-ne-san, is what you said true? You want me to supervise you and use blood to stimulate your blood phobia? Tsunade looked at Naruto, who was eager to stab himself with a knife, and hesitated. After thinking carefully, she said, I'm not in a hurry to treat my blood phobia. Wait until you master monster strength. I'll wait until you calm down. With your death-seeking personality, if we start now, you should be able to torture me to death. You're not learning immediately. Naruto sighed with some disappointment, and Tsunade felt a chill down her spine. She guiltily changed the topic and said, Now, do what I said before. Change the normal chakra into the yang chakra to attack. At the moment of the attack, concentrate the yang chakra in your body on your fist to achieve an instant explosion. Naruto nodded, walked back to the stone platform, and took a deep breath. Exhale. Inhale. When his emotions stabilized, he began to concentrate on the chakra transformation, and the yang chakra spread throughout his body. Then, he used chakra to stimulate his body and increase his strength. 10 times? Normal chakra was 10 times. And now Naruto didn't know how many times it was. He took a deep breath and accumulated power. At the same time, the yang chakra in his body gathered power on his right fist. In an instant, an indescribable pain filled his entire fist, and the compressed chakra spread out of his fist, emitting a red halo. Tsunade-ne-san doesn't have a halo when she uses her monster strength, right? Naruto didn't have the time to think about it. Chakra had already reached the point where she had to spit it out. Naruto no longer hesitated and punched the cliff below him. Boom! The cliff exploded like firecrackers, splashing out in all directions. Naruto's hand was steaming hot. At the same time, due to the reaction force, Naruto was thrown a distance away. Then, he switched to the wind attribute. Chakra's attribute changed, and the airflow was stable. Naruto was suspended in mid-air. Right now, that section of the cliff that was facing the sky had finally died of old age. It had died. It was a spectacular sight. Crackling sounds could be heard as gravel rolled about and smoke curled up in the air. This attack is 100 times stronger? Naruto was secretly speechless. He was shocked by the power of this punch. Then the airflow under him slowed down slightly, and he glided towards Tsunade's position. Sister Tsunade, I did the right thing, right? Could this be monstrous strength? To be honest, Tsunade was also a little shocked by this power. How much of chakra did he compress? Yang attribute chakra isn't easy to convert. Naruto could convert so much chakra into yang attribute chakra in an instant? It's a bit monstrous. Tsunade gave a pertinent evaluation. The power is good, but most of the power comes from the amount of yang attribute chakra. The technique is still lacking. First of all, Tsunade raised her hand and gathered chakra. Tsunade's hand also began to glow, but it was different from Naruto's red light. It was white. She explained, this effect shows that your chakra isn't condensed enough. Chakra is scattered out of your body. As she said that, Tsunade flicked her finger on a tree. The tree seemed to have been shot in the head by a sniper, and the entire tree crown was blown away, leaving only a section on the ground. Then the halo on Tsunade's hand disappeared, and she flicked it again on another tree. This time, it wasn't an explosion damage. The tree trunk was directly penetrated, and the surrounding trunk was distorted and the surface burst as if it was overloaded by a hydraulic press. This is the effect produced by the same amount of chakra. After chakra is condensed, the effect produced is not as spectacular as before, but the power is actually greater. Naruto nodded again and again. He gathered a little chakra and then tried it. If I have a steel ball in my hand, this time, the power should be comparable to a sniper rifle, right? Naruto picked up a stone and tried it. Bang! The stone broke through the air and penetrated a tree in the distance. Naruto began to like monstrous strength. Tsunade looked at the stone that Naruto shot out and nodded. This time, Naruto's hand didn't glow. This meant that he was very good at controlling chakra. For ordinary people, controlling chakra takes years of practice, but Naruto, forget it, don't think about him. Are all the young people nowadays so talented? Should I accept another disciple? This disciple was too easy to teach, so Tsunade couldn't help but have the idea of accepting another disciple. Recently, she was also observing a little girl, Sakura Haruno, who Naruto recommended to her. Watching Naruto shoot more than a dozen stones in a row and having fun, Tsunade felt that she could talk a little more. She said, "Now you have officially come into contact with the secret of monstrous strength, but this is only the beginning. At this stage, you can use the Yang attribute chakra to stimulate the body, regulate the body's metabolism, enhance the body's vitality, strengthen the bone hardness, and muscle strength." Naruto's eyes lit up. This was what he wanted. In this way, he could improve his strength as soon as possible, and then open the third gate of the Hashiman Tonku. Tsunade smiled as if she saw through Naruto's thoughts, and continued, "In terms of strengthening the body, there is one thing I need to tell you clearly. The stronger the physical strength, the better. A stronger body means a stronger body, but it also means a stronger consumption, and the number of times a cell can divide is limited, so it means you will die earlier." Hearing this, Naruto suddenly felt cold. Shortened lifespan? Strength and lifespan, which is more important? Without strength, you can't protect yourself, but without lifespan, what's the point of strength? Then should I open the third gate? Naruto thought for a long time, and when he looked up, he found that Tsunade was looking at him with a smile. At this moment, Naruto suddenly had a feeling that she knew his secret. Tsunade's eyes seemed to be saying, "Little guy, you're still pretending in front of me? I knew it." Was this an illusion? Tsunade's next sentence told him that this was not an illusion. Tsunade continued, "Let's take the Hashiman Tonku as an example." At this moment, Naruto's brain only felt a buzz. Wait, maybe I'm thinking too much, in fact. Tsunade just wanted to lift a chestnut? Tsunade, Hashiman Tonku. By removing the restrictions of the Hashiman Tonku on the body, you can obtain a short burst of power. The value of this technique is only in one point, and that is to kill the enemy. Even if you have to die, you have to kill the enemy. If the user's body meets the requirements of the first three gates, then there won't be too many side effects. It's just a reservoir opening up a little bit of water. However, after the fourth gate, it's not as simple as pouring a little bit of water. The huge uncontrolled water constantly hits the dam in the rushing flow, and damage to the dam is inevitable. This damage can be repaired, but the fourth gate is in the area that can be repaired, and after the fifth gate, it's an irreversible dangerous area. These are for ordinary people. For people who use monstrous strength, like your current situation, the third gate is your reparable area, the fourth gate is the dangerous area, and the fifth gate is the death area. When you really learn monstrous strength, you can do it. When you can superimpose a layer of Yang chakra, the reparable area will be reduced to the second gate. The second superposition, the first gate is the reparable area. The third layer, after the third layer, as long as you use it, it's equivalent to death. As for the reason, it's very simple. The state of not opening the Hashiman Tonku is like a perfect balloon. After opening the Hashiman Tonku, it's a balloon with a hole. The moment the monstrous strength erupts, it's equivalent to a balloon suddenly expanding, so at this time, if you open a hole in it, the balloon will inevitably explode. Understand? Tsunade looked at Naruto. Naruto nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Tsunade nodded with satisfaction, and her hand began to rub Naruto's head. "You're good enough." After comfortably enjoying the pleasure of being rubbed for a while, Naruto asked, "So, What's the first superposition of monstrous strength? Tsunade explained, that's the use of chakra's form change, fusing the yang chakra into a layer of film, wrapping it around the body, accumulating more power, and erupting more fiercely. Entering this stage, as I told you before, at the moment of eruption, the other parts of the body in the critical period will also be removed. This layer of film can not only erupt power, but also be a good defense. Naruto's eyes lit up when he heard this. It seems that the future will be great. It's just, if I don't open the Hashimon Tonku, dynamic vision won't exist. It seems that I have to study other ways out. Or, I can dig out Sasuke's Sharingan? But in contrast, Byakugan seems to be more suitable for him. Deducting Hinata's Sharingan is fine. Fire works. It's a bit cruel. How about I wait for my father-in-law to die and deduct his Sharingan? How long will I have to wait? Poison my father-in-law to death. Naruto's thoughts stepped into the danger zone. How about I learn the perception of ninjutsu from Jiraiya? I have to study it carefully. After all, the eyes are equal to the initiative. Chapter 191. Naruto called the first level of monster strength. According to Tsunade, once he learned it, he would officially be a beginner. But according to Tsunade, it would take at least 3 months to learn it. This was also the time given by Naruto's talent, which was discounted several times in a row. However, even so, Naruto was still not satisfied. 3 months. So long. Tsunade tried to make herself look calm. Originally, she wanted to say 1 year. Then, considering that Naruto spent 15 days to achieve 10 times the normal chakra and completed the yang chakra explosion in one go, he had to discount several times in succession to reach the 3-month limit. This guy is still not satisfied? Is 3 months a long time? Does he want to go to heaven? Thinking back to the past. Forget it, don't mention it, it's embarrassing to mention it. Then, Tsunade-san, how do I practice chakra's transformation? Tsunade took a deep breath, calmed down a little, and explained, you can buy a balloon, and then blow it when you have nothing to do. Feel the elasticity of the balloon, and then use the yang chakra to simulate the balloon. Well, this is your first step. Balloon again? Naruto found that he and the balloon were really fated. After all, the Rasengan was also a balloon, then a water ball, and then a rubber ball. Tsunade wouldn't ask him to blow a rubber ball, right? Or blow the tires. That scene was funny, but it shouldn't be possible to blow the tires because he didn't buy wood leaf. By the way, Tsunade-san, can I still use Hashimon Tonku? Although he didn't know how Tsunade knew that he learned Hashimon Tonku from Tsunade's words, Naruto was already convinced that Tsunade knew, so he didn't hide it and asked directly. Tsunade replied, you can use it before you officially learn monster strength. Once you learn it, you can throw it away. There's no big development in a self-destructive move. Naruto nodded again and again. His original plan was to learn the first 3 gates. After all, Naruto wasn't stupid. He didn't intend to develop himself into a high-level cannon fodder. Tsunade rubbed Naruto's head. Do you have any other questions? If not, I'll go back to work on the documents. That guy Shizun should be talking bad about me behind my back now. Naruto thought for a while, and then thought of a problem. Tsunade-san said that I can't overexert my body to improve my strength, so, how should I do this? He had been training with weights on his body for the past few days. It was only when he started learning monstrous strength that he was able to get rid of it. Therefore, he could not help but worry about himself. He did not know if his current training had exceeded the load his body could bear. If he exceeded his limit, his lifespan would be shortened. He still wanted to live a long life. Tsunade continued to rub Naruto's head and replied, you can use the yang attribute chakra to comb your body. It can't be described clearly with words because it's very complicated. As for how to comb it, sit down first. Naruto sat down on the ground. Tsunade continued to guide, adjust your body and mind, relax your body, calm your heart, and then control the yang attribute chakra to spread throughout your body. Meditation. Naruto was good at this because he hadn't given up on practicing spiritualization recently. The most basic part of spiritualization was meditation. After 3 breaths, Naruto adjusted his body to the most relaxed posture. The so-called relaxation didn't mean that his whole body was soft and piled up into a ball. What was loose was that his bones couldn't be loosened. His spine was straight, and he was relaxed. Just by sitting there, he would imperceptibly give off an aura of transcendence. Naruto entered the state. Tsunade's mouth was open, but she swallowed the rest of her words. Originally, she wanted to teach Naruto how to calm his heart. After all, a person's mind was like a monkey's heart and a horse's heart. It wasn't easy to calm down. However, Naruto entered the state directly. There were only 3 possibilities for such a fast speed. The first was that Naruto was an idiot who didn't think about anything in his head. The second was that Naruto really had a pure heart. The so-called pure heart was transparent. It was colorless and transparent. It was neither black nor white. It was neither good nor evil. There were no worldly values, no moral rules. If he thought it was good, then it was good. Because it was transparent, he was black in the darkness, and white in the light. The third was that Naruto had practiced before. The first possibility could be ruled out. How could a monkey's mind be an idiot? Tsunade wasn't sure about the second possibility. After all, that kind of state of mind only existed in theory. Only a baby would have that kind of state of mind, and a newborn baby at that. The third possibility. Although chakra's extraction also involved meditation. Naruto was obviously in deep meditation. This made her think of her past boyfriend, Duan. Duan often meditated when he practiced the spirit transformation technique. Could it be that Naruto had also learned the spirit transformation technique? Tsunade looked at Naruto, who had entered the state of meditation, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she smiled. She said with some emotion, "What a little demon." A little demon monk. Time passed by, and Tsunade waited on the side. However, an hour passed, 2 hours passed, 3 hours passed. Naruto was motionless like an old monk in meditation. Tsunade raised her eyebrows. Logically speaking, using yang chakra to cleanse the body shouldn't take so long. Tsunade walked closer to Naruto and carefully observed him. Naruto's breathing was very stable, and his body was very straight. It seemed that he was still meditating. However, Tsunade noticed that Naruto's eyes were rolling, and his eyelashes were trembling. Tsunade's mouth twitched. There was no other reason. Because this sign indicated that Naruto was dreaming. In other words, Naruto had fallen asleep in meditation. In order to confirm her guess, Tsunade raised her finger and tapped Naruto's head. And so, Naruto slowly fell down and lay down. He exhaled, inhaled. Saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. Naruto was sleeping very soundly. Tsunade suddenly wanted to hit someone. To be precise, if it was Jiraiya in front of her, he would have flown away already. Tsunade took a deep breath, and finally exhaled helplessly. This was her precious disciple. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Tsunade felt that Naruto was her nemesis. She raised her hand and carried Naruto. Naruto curled up in her arms like a kitten, smacking his lips. Naruto was sleeping very soundly. Forget it, let's take him home. Tsunade carried Naruto home and put him on her bed. Naruto continued to sleep indifferently. This completely defenseless state made Tsunade speechless. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly noticed something. It seemed that Naruto's chakra was still flowing in his body. This was not a sign that he was sleeping. Tsunade observed Naruto again and found that the surface of Naruto's skin would emit a faint red light from time to time. Because it was very faint, it was not very easy to distinguish. Tsunade originally thought that it was the normal redness of blood flow. Was he using the yang attribute chakra to repair his body? Tsunade continued to observe, and then she saw that Naruto's head had grown a little hair. This little guy actually repaired the damaged hair roots? This was not a simple repair. She couldn't help but sigh. This guy is really a monster. after the hair roots grew a layer of fluffy hair, they stopped growing. Tsunade looked at Naruto's head that changed from a bald egg to a hairy egg. To be honest, she still thought that a bald egg looked better. Then Tsunade made a decision. Chakra gathered in her hand and brushed over Naruto's head. The layer of fluffy hair that had just grown on Naruto's head fell off. Then Tsunade picked up a blank scroll and drew. It was an unknown formation. After drawing it, she covered Naruto's head. Tsunade's hand sealing technique. The runes on the scroll spread out from the scroll and covered Naruto's head, then shrank into a black spot in the center of Naruto's head. It looked like a monk's scar. Tsunade took the scroll and carefully looked at Naruto's head. She smiled with satisfaction and praised herself, perfect. At this time, Naruto was sleeping soundly. Chapter 192. When Naruto woke up, Tsunade was no longer at home. There was a note left beside the bed. It said that she had already gone to Naruto's building, and that if he needed her, he could go there. If he had nothing else to do, he could buy some balloons and start cultivating. Naruto was stunned for a while, then raised his hand and touched his head. He remembered that he had a beautiful dream, in which he saw his hair. It was healthy, strong, straight, smooth, soft, and golden hair. So it was just a dream. Naruto sighed with a little disappointment. Then, he got up from the bed. The clothes he was wearing were still his underwear. His outerwear and shoes were placed neatly beside the bed. Naruto picked up his clothes and put them on. He had been to Tsunade's house before, and he was very familiar with it. Because when Tsunade moved, 80% of the cleaning was done by Naruto's clone, and then buying the furniture, shopping, and moving things was also done by Naruto's clone. At the same time, because the house was very big and there were many rooms, Tsunade also asked Naruto to find a room to live in, but Nine Tails wanted to live in the store manager's house, so he refused. As for the reason why Nine Tails wanted to live in the store manager's house, it was very simple, it was sweet. There were many reasons why Naruto wanted to live in the store manager's house. For example, if he wanted to wake up early, if he wanted to eat, if his clothes were dirty, someone would wash them. The most important thing was that it didn't cost money, it was perfect. Not to mention that he practiced swordsmanship every day, and there were 2 people by his side to guide him. Although the process was a bit painful, and he was defeated without dignity time and time again, his improvement was also very fast. For example, Naruto could now last 2 minutes against Xia, and Haru, 1 minute. After putting on his clothes and tidying up the bed, Naruto left Tsunade's house. He didn't have anything to do with Tsunade, so he went to buy some balloons. But as soon as he went out, he saw a familiar figure, Kakashi. Naruto blinked to the back of the house. Then, he used his mental power to attack the head of a sparrow on the eaves, forcibly establishing a mental link. Under Naruto's control, the little sparrow glanced at Kakashi. Kakashi carried Big White Fang on his back and walked towards Naruto's building. Not to block your own path? That's good, just buy it. Naruto heaved a sigh of relief, and then quietly slipped out from the other side of the house. When they passed by a vendor, Naruto looked left and right mysteriously and then told the owner that he wanted to buy 2 balloons. In the end, the boss hesitantly gave him 2 packs of condoms. It was the kind of condom that was square and looked like it had a key ring inside. Naruto stared at the 2 bags of condoms for a long time. The corner of his mouth twitched as he asked, "Boss, do I not look like a good person?" The boss shook his head repeatedly and replied, "Good man, very good man." Naruto continued to ask with a dark face, "Then do I look that old? This thing can only be bought by an adult." The boss felt that Naruto's aura was different. He replied with sweat on his forehead, not old at all. Your hairstyle is so avant-garde, you don't look like you're 20 years old." Naruto's face became even darker. 20 your grandmother, I'm only 12 this year, okay? 12. How old do I have to be to look like I'm 20? Sure enough, hair is a necessary sign of youth. I have to learn monster strength quickly, then start learning sealing jutsu. I have to learn Ein Seal as soon as possible, and then learn creation regeneration jutsu to repair the damaged hair roots. Thinking of his hair, Naruto was very annoyed. Wasn't it just a piece of durian fart candy? Did Tsunade and Shizune have to take away his hair? Resentment. Naruto looked up again and found that the boss was still staring at his head without moving. He couldn't help but say unhappily, "What are you looking at?" The boss quickly withdrew his gaze and said submissively, "Nothing, nothing." Then he looked at the 2 condoms that were taken out. As if he had encountered a protection fee, he compromised and said, "These 2 condoms are my filial piety to you, you don't have to pay." The corner of Naruto's mouth twitched, and he said fiercely, "Do I look like someone who doesn't pay?" The boss shook his head repeatedly. Then Naruto grabbed the 2 bags of condoms and walked away with his head held high without paying. The boss watched Naruto leave. Seeing that he was far away, he muttered, "Are monks so arrogant when buying condoms these days? The world has changed." Naruto walked a long way before suddenly remembering that he was here to buy balloons. He took out 2 bags of condoms from his pocket and hesitated. In theory, this thing can also be blown. But after thinking about it, he put it back in his pocket. In another shop, in order not to cause a misunderstanding, Naruto reminded seriously, "I want balloons, for children." Then, he successfully bought 5 of them. He picked one up and blew it with his mouth. One of the benefits of losing his hair was that almost no one could recognize him on the streets. The long period of training made Naruto's body especially strong. His height also began to increase every day. He indeed didn't look like a 12-year-old child. Furthermore, Naruto didn't notice that his pants were a little short when he woke up. He had grown at least 5 centimeters from his sleep. As he walked, Naruto blew the balloons. The balloons were sometimes big and sometimes small. They kept popping. Is this cultivation? Naruto felt his balls ache. Then, a boy who was blowing bubblegum stared at his mouth from afar. He tugged at the woman beside him who looked like his mother and said, "Mommy, mommy, that uncle's bubblegum is so big." The woman beside him lectured, "Silly son, that's a balloon, not bubblegum. Bubblegum can't be blown that big." Hence, the boy shouted, "Mommy, mommy, I want a balloon." The woman frowned and glared at Naruto from afar. Then, she was dragged by her son to buy balloons. Naruto felt his liver ache. "Uncle, what kind of seniority is this? And I'm blowing my balloons. It's a little silly to blow balloons on the streets." Then, he walked into a shop next to the boy and bought more than 10 bubblegum. After changing the balloons to bubblegum, Naruto felt less silly. Chewing bubblegum and blowing bubbles on the streets was much more natural than blowing balloons. However, the moment he left the shop, he encountered the brat again. He pointed at him again and said, "Mommy, mommy, that uncle's balloon is so big." The woman looked at the bubblegum in Naruto's mouth and corrected him, "That's bubblegum." The boy stared at the bubblegum in Naruto's mouth that was still expanding and suddenly burst into tears. He choked and whimpered, "What nonsense are you lying to me about?" The woman glared at Naruto and almost shouted, "Are you sick?" Naruto walked away with a black face. Children were the most annoying. What was that saying? 7 or 8 years old children were annoying to dogs. Naruto's bubblegum continued to expand. The diameter was almost 5 meters. Because of the expansion, the originally red bubblegum had swelled to a transparent color. As for why Naruto's bubblegum was so big, it was mainly because he injected the yang attribute chakra into the bubblegum. After walking a few steps, Naruto suddenly stopped and a sudden realization appeared in his mind. He felt that he seemed to know how to make the yang attribute chakra transform. Naruto bit the bubblegum to death and blew the bubble out. The bubblegum filled with yang chakra floated up into the air, and then a swallow rushed up. Who knows if it's blind or stupid? Then, boom! With a loud sound, it was like the tires of a large truck exploding. The swallow was directly crushed into a bald bird. At the same time, the brat who was crying in the distance was startled. He stopped for a while and then cried even louder. Naruto didn't pay attention to the brat and went straight to Naruto's office. He wanted Tsunade, he understood. Although the process of understanding was a bit ridiculous, He felt that he seemed to know how to make Chakra's transformation. Chapter 193. When Naruto arrived at Naruto's building, he slipped away before he even entered. That was because he saw Kakashi in Naruto's office. Fortunately, I was smart enough to use the sparrow to scout ahead. Naruto squatted at the intersection. At the same time, he used the shared vision of the mental link to secretly peek at the scene in Naruto's office from afar. At this time, other than Danzo, the second person Naruto did not want to see in Wood Leaf was Kakashi. The reason? Of course, it was because of big white teeth. However, Naruto said that he really did not do it on purpose. He admitted that his swordsmithing skills were terrible. After squatting at the corner of the street for half an hour, he saw that Kakashi was still standing in front of Naruto's desk. Naruto could not wait any longer. He decided to go home and have a meal first. He left the little sparrow to continue standing guard outside Naruto's office window. In order not to stand out, Naruto also controlled the sparrow to build a nest nearby and waited in the nest. However, the nest was a little tragic. It looked as if it had been destroyed by a storm. Back at the store manager's house, the fragrant food was quickly served on the table. Naruto wolfed it down like a hurricane. Degeno stood at the side and reported, "Sister Haniwe came today. She said that 15 ninjas who received prosthetic limbs jointly wrote a letter saying that they want to undergo prosthetic limb modification. This is the list of 15 people." Naruto was stuffing a chicken drumstick into his mouth. His mouth was covered in oil. Prosthetic limb modification? They don't want to live a good life, and now they want to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy? At the same time, he took the list and glanced at it. Among the 15 people, 12 were men and 3 were women. 5 of them were the 5 people Naruto noticed with disfigurement before. 2 were women and 3 were men. Below each person's name was the reason for submitting the application. Most of the reasons were that other than killing, they did not have any other specialties and did not have the confidence to integrate into the ordinary crowd. There were also those who didn't want to blend in with the ordinary people, such as the 5 disfigured people. After reading it, Naruto put the information aside and continued to eat. Artificial limb modification isn't something they can accept just because they want to. First, they have to prove their worth and prove their strength. Then, he looked up at Gu-En-I, who was staring at Gu-En-I in a daze. Recently, Naruto noticed that Gunny spent 60% of its time staring at Gunny in a daze. The other 40% of its time was spent drawing in a notebook. Sometimes, it would write a paragraph, and sometimes it would draw a picture. Naruto wanted to see the words, but he didn't let him. He guessed that it was something private like a diary. As for the paintings, he had seen a few. The paintings were all scenes with little Gunny, and they were very well drawn. Naruto had teased Gunny that he could set up a stall on the street to earn money. He said, "Those who want to prove their strength, let them defeat Gurney. Whoever can make Gurney cry will be able to receive future prosthetic limb modifications." As soon as he said that, a pencil flew over and stabbed Naruto's head. However, it was frozen by the ice wall that rose from Naruto's body. Big Gunny blinked and replied seriously, "Are you really going to answer Sister Hwayu like that?" Naruto didn't say anything. Instead, he grinned and nodded. The reason? He wanted to see how strong Gunny was. Naruto still remembered the first time they met. Naruto felt that Gunny should be very strong. If he wasn't, Naruto would be happy to see him cry. Big Gunny looked a little troubled and said, "Do you really want her? She doesn't know how to control her strength." This time, it was Naruto's turn to be stunned. Doesn't know how to control her strength? Big Gunny nodded and said, "A few people once made fun of little Gunny, and then those people went missing. After that, the dean cleared out the garden for us to move around." There's such a thing? Why didn't that damned dean tell him? Naruto blinked and said guiltily, "What if it was you?" Big Gunny said embarrassedly, "That time. I also participated." The corner of Naruto's mouth twitched and he asked instinctively, "What happened to those people?" "What happened to them?" Big Gunny said embarrassedly, They were buried alive in the garden. Hee hee. Fortunately, they weren't made into human meat buns. Naruto complained in his heart. However, when he thought about how the two girls planted people in the garden, and then Tion admired the flowers in the garden, Naruto felt his scalp go numb. Then, he thought of something and reminded them, in the future, even if you want to bury someone alive, don't bury them in this courtyard. When he said this, Xia, who was behind Naruto, secretly glanced at a particularly lush tree outside the window. There was a guilty look in her eyes. Naruto didn't see this, but Big Gunny did. Then, while Naruto was eating, he mouthed, "What's under that tree?" Xia mouthed back, "People." Then, she thought for a moment and added, "A lot of people." Big Gunny smiled. Naruto was munching on a drumstick. On the other side of the mental link, Kakashi was still standing there. Naruto couldn't help but complain, did this guy get promoted to a watchdog? If that's the case, it'll be troublesome to find Tsunade-ne-san in the future. Naruto continued to instruct the little sparrow to optimize its nest. As it flew around, Naruto noticed that there was a silly bird staring at Naruto's office. Naruto controlled the little sparrow to fly back and forth a dozen times, but the bird didn't move at all, as if it was dead. There was something wrong with this bird. That was Naruto's hunch. Another half an hour later, in Naruto's office, Tsunade finished writing a scroll of unknown content and handed it to Kakashi. Then, Kakashi finally left Naruto's office. However, Naruto was not in a hurry to find Tsunade. He was now curious about the bird. It was a quail twice the size of Naruto's sparrow. This bird. Was it controlled by a ninja secretly protecting Naruto? Or was it controlled by someone who wanted to monitor Naruto? But no matter which one it was, as far as Naruto knew, among the wood leaf, other than spiritualization, only the Yamanaka clan's mind-body jutsu could control an animal for investigation. Naruto couldn't rule out the possibility that someone in the wood leaf umbu could use spiritualization, but he felt that the latter was more likely. At the same time, Naruto remembered that by Danzo's side, there was a person named Yamanaka Kaze. Now, if there was someone in the wood leaf who would monitor Naruto, then it was only Danzo. So if it was protection, Naruto didn't know who was controlling the bird, but if it was monitoring, it must be Danzo. Old boy finally can't sit still? His psychological quality is not good. And this silly bird, it's not professional at all. How can a bird just stand there and not move? It's normal for it to fly like me. Naruto controlled the little sparrow to fly back to the nest with a straw in its mouth and continued to practice the nest building skill. Needless to say, after a few hours of building, Naruto's nest finally looked like something, but it was built a little too big. Maybe even an eagle could live in it. Maybe it was because the nest built by Naruto was really strange. A lot of sparrows flew over to watch the sparrow built by Naruto. Some kind-hearted ones even joined in to help Naruto modify it. In short, Naruto and the sparrows got along very well. But Naruto was too focused on building the nest, and when he came back to his senses, the fat quail was gone. The sparrow controlled by Naruto took a bug shared with it by a bird and ate it deliciously. Through spirit sharing, the bird's thoughts told him that the bug was fat and delicious. On the other side, Naruto calmly gnawed on the pig trotters. When the sky darkened and Naruto's sparrow was squeezed into the nest with a bunch of other sparrows, a crow flew over and stood where the quail was standing. Then, it stood there stupidly without moving. Naruto knew that the idiot was back. Then, should I change my bird too? It was dark. A bird at night. Naruto raised his head and said to the girls around him, "Who wants to go catch an owl with me?" Little Gunny was tired from playing and had fallen asleep on the sofa in the living room. Gunny stared at Little Gunny in a daze, while Spring and Summer were doing housework and boiling milk. Then, Naruto looked at Big Gunny. Big Gunny nodded and said, "Sounds interesting." Naruto grinned and said, "I've already thought of a name. After we catch it, we'll name it Hedwig." Then he added, It would be best if we catch a white one." Then he hesitated. "Wouldn't a white one be too conspicuous at night? Black one? Forget it. We'll just catch whatever we catch." Chapter 194. That night, Tsunade went straight home after coming out of Naruto's office. In the bedroom, Tsunade established a connection with the perception enchantment around the house. The surrounding scenery was projected into Tsunade's eyes. Last time, she found Jiraiya with this perception enchantment. Then, she saw the crow. The crow had a brown spot on its beak. She had seen this silly bird for the past few days. This silly bird flew near her house almost every night and didn't stay for a long time, but Tsunade still noticed it. Tsunade checked the vicinity, and the nearest crow's nest was a kilometer away. And the owner of the crow's nest wasn't this crow, so this crow was very suspicious. The perception enchantment expanded, and Tsunade didn't see anything suspicious except for the crow. But although there was nothing suspicious, there was a funny thing. It was a gray-brown owl, chasing a mouse, and then the funny thing was that its head was stuck in the mouse's hole when it swooped down. At this time, it was kicking its legs to pull out its head. Tsunade felt that this owl was as stupid as a dolphin, and dolphin often got stuck in the gap of the sofa. She withdrew her consciousness from the perception enchantment. Tsunade went to the bathroom and then returned to the bedroom to sleep. At night, it was quiet. Another Tsunade. Tsunade's body tiptoed to the basement with a basin of water. There was a fish in the basin, and it was splashing some water in a panic, but then it was suppressed by Tsunade's chakra and stayed motionless in the basin. Walking into the basement, Tsunade locked the door and found an open space to put the basin of water down. With a click, a match was ignited, and a candle was lit. The candlelight was weak, and the flame swayed gently with Tsunade's breath. Tsunade took a deep breath, then took out a ball of paper towel and a scroll. The scroll unfolded, and a complex formation was outlined on it. Then the paper towel unfolded, and the leftover fish bones were wrapped in it. Tsunade placed the fishbone on the scroll, made a hand seal, and then the fishbone disappeared into the scroll. Tsunade looked at the basin in front of her. Chakra communicated with the formation on the scroll, and a black seal stretched out from the scroll and shot towards the basin, then formed a circle around the basin. Then, with this main line as the core, the runes were completely unfolded, forming a formation that covered more than half of the ground. Tsunade took a deep breath, and at the same time, the candlelight shook violently. Tsunade began to complete the final hand seal. Edo Tensei. The fish in the basin stiffened. Fragments that looked like ashes gathered from all directions and wrapped around the fish's body. Soon, the black carp turned into a deep-sea fish that should have appeared in the deep sea. Tsunade stared at the deep-sea fish, her pupils contracted, and her face showed a look of surprise. She had succeeded. She was pretty sure that the deep-sea fish in the basin was the one in her lunchbox. Because when Jing-in was cooking, she went to the kitchen once to take a look at the fish. The joy made Tsunade's breathing quickened, and the candle flame swayed more violently because of the airflow. Tsunade made another hand seal. Release. Walala. The ashes that gathered around the deep-sea fish dispersed, revealing the freshwater fish inside again, but it was motionless and dead. Tsunade learned Edo Tensei, and Naruto successfully pulled the owl's head out of the mouse hole. There was still a struggling mouse in its mouth. It shook its head to get rid of the mud on its feathers. Then, it raised its neck and swallowed the mouse whole, burping it. The lights in Tsunade's house were turned off, and the black crow was gone. Naruto tilted his head and decided to go home. But not long after taking off, a black shadow flashed in front of him. It was the shadow that came out of Tsunade's house. The owl turned its head to look in the direction where the shadow disappeared. However, the shadow had already disappeared. Fortunately, Naruto had a backup plan. It was a small snake. Snakes don't rely on sight to lock onto their prey, but something called heat. Therefore, Naruto locked onto the shadow with the snake's senses. Then he chased after it. Zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. Forget it. Zigzag-zag felt extremely tiring. Naruto finally controlled the owl, let the owl grab the snake, and then flapped its wings to chase after it. When the target stopped moving, the owl let go of its claws, and the snake landed on the tree trunk, then circled down and continued to walk towards the target. Shake. Can't stop. I'm shuttling through swaying steps. Naruto felt like the snake he controlled was on drugs. Its body was twisting so much that it was almost as fast as a corgi dog's electric motor. But fortunately, he finally arrived. Under the snake's infrared thermal vision, Naruto saw the figure of that person, but strangely, the surroundings were quiet. Except for small insects such as grasshoppers and mice, it was very quiet. There was no one. Where is this? The snake's vision was a bit difficult to recognize, but the owl's vision assisted. In the store manager's house, Naruto, who was sharing his vision, was drinking hot milk made by Haru Sakuratani. Then Naruto spat out the milk. Cemetery? He chased someone to a cemetery in the middle of the night. Naruto choked on the milk, and he coughed like a baby who drank too much. Beside him, Gurney's wheelchair floated over under Chakra's control. He sneered, "Are you kidding me? How old are you and you're still spitting out milk?" Naruto rolled his eyes. He really wanted to throw the hot milk in Gurney's face. Of course, it was just a thought. When he thought about the corpse planted in the garden of the sanatorium, Naruto felt that it was very creepy. Naruto took a deep breath and calmed down. The snake's thermal vision told him that the person was a living person, and that calmed Naruto's nervous heart. If he did not have the snake's thermal vision, the association would be horrifying. For example, the person's head suddenly turned 180 degrees and shouted at Naruto, "I'm home." Hee. The owl did not fly in the sky for too long. It dived into the dense forest and moved forward stealthily. The snake continued to wriggle and sway, shuttling back and forth like an epileptic. Then, through the snake's thermal vision, it saw the person bending over, holding something in his hand, as if he was digging for something. What is he digging for in a cemetery? Could it be that there are people who dig in this world? That's funny. Looking at people digging in the middle of the night. Naruto's mouth twitched. But he was still curious about who this person was. Naruto couldn't see the person's facial features with his thermal vision. He could only see the silhouette of the person's body. Also, the person digging the grave seemed to be nervous because his heart was beating faster and his blood flow was increasing. The red glow on the person's body became clearer and clearer. The owl was still 500 meters away from its target. 300 meters. 200 meters. 100 meters. It was time to reveal the mystery. This time, Naruto learned his lesson. He drank the milk and did not drink it. But when he saw the person, Naruto choked on his own saliva. Tsunade. Tsunade-sen dug a grave in the middle of the night? In the store manager's house, Gurney took a book from the bookshelf and was about to read it when he heard Naruto choking and coughing. He asked worriedly, "Are you okay? You look like you're going to choke to death if you're not careful." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Didn't I almost choke to death?" The scene was too shocking. Could it be that Tsunade-san was short on money recently? So she had an idea and dug the grave to earn some extra money? Or did she find a treasure among the grave goods in the wood leaf's confidential files? The Fukuro looked at the tombstone to see who was chosen by Tsunade. At this moment, a black crow landed not far away from them. Chapter 195. On the tombstone, Kato's name fell into Fukuro's eyes. The moment he saw the name, Naruto figured out a lot of things. Why did Tsunade agree to Jiraiya's return to the village? Did she reignite her dream of becoming Naruto? In the development of the original world, Tsunade was almost convinced by Orochimaru. It was Naruto in the original world who resonated with Tsunade's dream of becoming Naruto and his age and appearance that were similar to Tsunade's dead brother. This time was different because this time Jiraiya brought Tsunade back. Naruto didn't know what happened during this period. But inferring from the current situation, at that time, Tsunade probably met Orochimaru or Kabuto. Since Jiraiya could find Tsunade's whereabouts through the underground trading house, there was no reason why Orochimaru couldn't think of this method. Then Tsunade learned from Orochimaru or Kabuto that Orochimaru mastered the forbidden technique of resurrecting the dead. The reason why she didn't trade with Orochimaru was probably that Tsunade couldn't cure Orochimaru's hand. After all, Orochimaru's hand wasn't poisoned or cursed, but the sole of his arm was sealed in the stomach of the Shinigami. Or he was interrupted by Jiraiya halfway. As for why Tsunade knew that the forbidden technique was recorded in the Forbidden Technique Scroll, she probably learned it from Orochimaru. It's also possible that she already knew. After all, Tsunade was the granddaughter of the first Naruto Senju Hashirama, and the second Naruto Senju Tobirama, who developed the Edo Tensei, was Tsunade's second grandfather. All kinds of possible clues were connected together, which was the reason why Tsunade returned to Wood Leaf as Naruto. Because as long as she inherited Naruto, Tsunade could come into contact with the Forbidden Technique Scroll. She could learn the Edo Tensei and resurrect her dead lover, Kaito, and her younger brother. Rope Tree. In the store manager's house, Naruto took a sip of hot milk, licked his lips, and tasted the milk fragrance in his mouth. At the same time, some thoughts arose in his mind. Edo Tensei seems like a good ninjutsu. Should he also find a chance to learn it? Naruto's consciousness entered the memory of the Forbidden Technique Scroll and checked the Edo Tensei. The introduction was easy to understand. It introduced the principles of this technique. Imitating the idea of sealing the tailed beast into the body of the human pillar force, using the body of a living person as the host, using the body of the dead to summon the soul of the dead. However, Naruto couldn't understand what was going on. It was the summoning array for the Edo Tensei. The lines looked like scribbles to Naruto. Will there be detailed annotations at the back? Naruto flipped to the back of the book. Handprints. That wasn't what Naruto was looking for. Flipping further. He reached the end. After all, the Forbidden Technique Scroll was not a reference book. It only recorded ninjutsu, formations, hand seals, and the essentials of the technique. TSK, it seems that if I want to understand this technique, I have to first learn the knowledge of talisman arrays, which is the sealing technique. Fortunately, learning Tsunade's Ein seal also required knowledge of sealing techniques, so Seiji decided to take the opportunity to learn more. Kaito's grave was dug up by Tsunade. Then it was time to lift up the coffin. Naruto had seen Wood Leaf's funeral before. After Sandame Naruto received his lunchbox, he learned that this world practiced cremation. Then, could the ashes be used to cast spells? Naruto recalled the records on the Forbidden Technique Scroll. The records were left behind by the dead. It was a bit general. Tsunade sent the coffin over in the Spiritual Link visual sharing system, and then she froze there, motionless. Naruto wanted to take a closer look, but he was afraid of being discovered. In the end, he didn't move. After a while, Tsunade walked to another grave and dug it up. It was the grave of Tsunade's younger brother, Nawaki. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Naruto controlled the owl to carefully fly some distance away from the tall tree. He found a good angle to take a look inside the coffin. The coffin was empty. There wasn't even an urn inside. Not long after, Nawaki's coffin was also opened. It was still empty. Who took it? Orochimaru? Tsunade squatted down, showing signs of losing control of her emotions, but in the end, she held it back. She put the coffin back in and left. Naruto also planned to leave. At this time, the snake's thermal vision found a crow not far from him. An old acquaintance. Naruto controlled the snake to quietly crawl over, and then bit it. It hit the throat, killing it in one blow. Beside Danzo, Yamanaka's body trembled and suddenly curled up on the ground. Danzo frowned and asked, "Were you discovered?" Yamanaka twitched on the ground for a while. When he stood up again, his eyes were bloodshot, and his mental state was weak. Obviously, he had suffered a mental backlash. Yamanaka knelt down on one knee and replied, "I'm not sure. The crow I controlled was suddenly bitten to death by a snake." Snake? When it came to snakes, Danzo couldn't help but think of Orochimaru, but that guy shouldn't have come to Wood Leaf now. The result? What did you find? Yamanaka forced himself to answer. Tsunade went to the cemetery and opened the coffins of Kaito and Nobunaga, but the coffins were empty. Danzo nodded and waved his hand. "I see. You go and rest." The crow died, and the snake controlled by Naruto swallowed. It didn't take long for the crow to be swallowed into the snake's stomach. The snake's stomach bulged. Naruto tried to walk in a Z shape, but it didn't move, so he cancelled a mental link. The owl was also cancelled, but Naruto didn't know that as soon as he cancelled the link, the owl flew back to the store manager's house. There was also the snake, which stayed on the ground for a while, and then it also moved toward the store manager's house. Walk in a Z shape. Walk in a Z shape. Walk in a Z shape. It was a little difficult to bulge its stomach, but it still worked very hard. Not long after, the owl flew back and landed on a branch, looking down at the snake. The snake also felt the owl's gaze. The two guys looked at each other for a long time, and finally, the owl swooped down, grabbed the snake with its claws, and then spread its wings and flew away. The snake turned its head and looked at the owl's throat, and it had an impulse to rush up and bite it. But maybe it was full today. The snake finally shifted its gaze and began to look down at the beautiful village below. This was the second time it flew today, and to be honest, it felt good. So it wagged its tail like a puppy. In the store manager's house, Naruto was lost in thought after cutting off the mental link. Kato and Nobunaga's coffins were empty. Tsunade wanted to resurrect them, so she couldn't give up. The next step was to find the whereabouts of the ashes, or to find Orochimaru. So, what role did Danzo play in this matter? In Naruto's view, the crow was most likely done by Danzo's subordinate. Danzo. Orochimaru. When Orochimaru was in Woodleaf, most of the live experiments were secretly supported by Danzo. Danzo benefited from the transplant of the Sharingan on his arm, and Hashirama's cells. So, these two guys should still be in contact with each other now? Naruto suddenly felt a headache. Is he now Danzo's opponent? If he doesn't give Danzo a chance to use Izanagi with the Sharingan on his right arm, and the right eye's Kotoama Tsukumi, I don't think I can do it. Naruto felt a headache. It's a bit early to confront Danzo, but, if he doesn't, he feels that sooner or later something big will happen. Chapter 196. The next morning, at Tsunade's house, Tsunade was eating breakfast as usual. It could be seen that after a night, she had covered up her anger about the theft of her lover and brother's ashes. However, although the demonstration was good, the atmosphere was still a bit dull. Naruto pretended to know nothing about what happened last night and reported the results of his practice to Tsunade. He blew a big bubble with the Yang attribute chakra. Tsunade looked at the bubble in Naruto's mouth and was petrified. She even forgot to chew the rice in her mouth. After a long while, Tsunade stiffly swallowed the rice in her mouth and asked without confidence, "How did you do it?" So, Naruto told her about yesterday's encounter with a naughty child. To be honest, Tsunade didn't understand the connection between balloons, bubblegum, and such rapid practice. Tsunade-ne-san, what about the next practice? How do I apply this membrane to the monstrous force? Tsunade stiffly lowered her head and began to eat the rice in her bowl. She said numbly, "Let me eat first, then I'll teach you." Hearing such shocking news early in the morning, Tsunade felt like she was living in a dream. After eating, Tsunade still felt that today was a bit unreal. She even looked at the calendar to make sure that she didn't sleep for 3 months. She felt even more unreal. Tsunade took Naruto to the window. Use your hand to form a Yang attribute chakra bubble again. A bubble appeared in Naruto's hand. Tsunade stared at the bubble in Naruto's hand and commanded, "Now add more Yang attribute chakra to the membrane on the surface of the chakra bubble." Naruto injected chakra into the surface of the membrane. The color of the chakra bubble in his hand darkened, but the ball shrank. Tsunade looked at the smaller chakra ball with a look of realization on her face. It was really successful. Tsunade felt that her chest was tight. The reason why the chakra sphere shrank was because Naruto's Yang attribute chakra membrane was indeed elastic. Thus, the sphere shrank after thickening chakra. How long did it take for him to learn this transformation? Tsunade expressed that she didn't want to remember. Comparisons were odious. Naruto continued to inject chakra's Yang energy into the chakra bubble. The bubble shrank from the size of a watermelon to the size of a fist, and finally to the size of a glass bead. The color had also turned crimson. Tsunade pointed to the window and said, "Throw this ball in the sky and see how powerful it is." Naruto threw the chakra ball out. At this moment, Naruto thought of the Rasengan. Can the Rasengan be thrown out in this way? I must give it a try when I get back. The glass ball-sized bubble was thrown more than 10 meters into the air. Without the support of Naruto's chakra, the chakra ball suddenly expanded. Bang! There was a loud bang. The glass on the surrounding windows was shattered into pieces. Naruto looked at Tsunade, who nodded numbly. Congratulations, you've learned a layer of monstrous strength. You've learned it? Tsunade-san, but how can this transformation be applied to monstrous strength? Then Tsunade took Naruto to the cliff on the west bank. She demonstrated the complete version of the monstrous strength step by step. Naruto now understood that the so-called layer of monstrous strength was to condense a layer of chakra membrane that spread outward in the body. The strength of this membrane depended on the strength of the yang chakra's activated cells, which was the tenfold chakra explosion he had practiced before. Then, on the outer layer of the membrane, a layer of shrinking membrane was condensed. The stress generated by the interaction of the two acted on the yang chakra in the middle layer. This was monstrous strength. The explosion was to open an opening at the place where the outer layer attacked. Then, the compressed yang chakra would spray out. The power would explode out like a bullet. After understanding, Naruto failed several times, and finally succeeded on the 5th try. He punched the ground, and the ground caved in and cracked. The scene was spectacular, just like what Tsunade had demonstrated to him before. A 5-meter deep pit instantly collapsed. Tsunade stood aside and watched indifferently. Once again, she felt that she was ridiculed by her talent. But she was also very proud. At least he was her disciple, and she taught him. Well, if he wasn't, she would have kicked him to death. Tsunade rubbed Naruto's head. Well, since you've learned a layer of monstrous strength, a second layer of monstrous strength is only a matter of time. A second layer of monstrous strength is just another layer of membrane outside the first layer to increase the pressure and increase the explosive power. And let me tell you a piece of good news. The number of layers of monstrous strength depends on the power that the first layer of monstrous strength can withstand. When you're able to make a tenfold explosion of ordinary chakra, you already have a foundation of 5 layers of monstrous strength. In other words, you already have the strongest attack of monstrous strength under the normal state. If you want to improve, you have to learn the Yin Seal, and then use the Yang Chakra stored in the Yin Seal as the source of power to enter the Baihao technique mode. That way, you can quickly go from 5 layers of monstrous strength to 10 layers of monstrous strength. For Naruto, these words were a great joy from the sky. He couldn't help but feel a little smug, and the light in his eyes was shining. So, I'm already very strong now? Tsunade told herself over and over again that this was her apprentice, so she didn't want to shoot this talented kid to the sky. Kuroto rubbed Naruto's head and said, "From tomorrow onwards, you will start learning Fuinjutsu from me. I hope you can progress as fast as me in Yin Fuinjutsu, so you can learn Baihao Jutsu as soon as possible. When you learn Baihao Jutsu, your hair roots can be cured." Hair? The desire for knowledge in Naruto's eyes was ignited. He promised, "I will work hard to learn monstrous strength." Tsunade patted Naruto's little head with satisfaction. She felt that it was a wise move to seal Naruto's hair. This way, she didn't have to worry that this kid wouldn't work hard to learn monstrous strength. After all, monstrous strength was too boring. Tsunade was a little worried that Naruto wouldn't be able to sit still. "Tsunade, then I'll go back to Naruto's building to deal with the documents. You continue to familiarize yourself with monstrous strength. Although you have the foundation and ability of the 5th layer of monstrous strength, it's not easy to do it." After Tsunade left, Naruto licked his lips and prepared to do the 2nd layer of monstrous strength. However, it failed beautifully. Naruto didn't believe it and tried again. Once, twice, thrice. He didn't know how many times. There was only one reason for failure. Once the 2nd layer of monstrous strength appeared, it would fuse with the 1st layer. In the end, it was still 1 layer of monstrous strength. The next day, Naruto threw the problem to Tsunade, and Tsunade threw it back. She only said that he needed to comprehend it himself. Again. Well, Naruto could only enter the state of learning monstrous strength. As for the second layer of monstrous strength, Naruto's understanding was to wait for an opportunity. The learning location of monstrous strength didn't need to be outdoors, so it was directly booked in the single room next to Naruto's office. This way, Tsunade could handle the documents while teaching him. As for the small study room, he wasn't sure if Tsunade had deliberately arranged it. There was only one chair and one table. There was also a book, The Basics of Monstrous Strength. Tsunade patted Naruto's head. "Read this book by yourself first, and then I'll explain it to you." Then, she closed the door. There was also a clicking sound, and it sounded like the door was locked from the outside. Naruto's mouth twitched, and he tried to open it. Clang. It didn't open. Tsunade's voice came from outside, "Call me when you're done reading." Naruto rolled his eyes and shifted his gaze to the book. Then, he took 5 minutes to finish scanning the 5-centimeter thick book, one chapter at a time. There were a total of 5 chapters on monstrous strength. The first chapter talked about the basic principles and selection of monstrous strength. The so-called monstrous strength was the carrier of the monstrous strength. It could be a scroll, the ground, or even a living creature, a human or other animal. The second chapter talked about hand seals and curses. Hand seals and curses corresponded to each other and were derived from each other. One curses could be used to represent one hand seal, or 2, or even more. Thus, there were 12 curses that could be used, corresponding to each of the 12 hand seals. There were a total of 120 curses. There were 36 defined symbols, and the rest were custom curses. The second chapter summarized hand seals into techniques. The curses were techniques, and the techniques were seals. In other words, seals were another form of ninjutsu, but they had a longer duration. The third chapter talked about encryption of curses. You could use custom curses, existing curses, and even text. Functions. 1. Encrypt the monstrous strength. Interfere with vision so that outsiders can't interpret the structure of the monstrous strength. 2. Label the technique. You could use text to label it, so that if you took the wrong scroll, you could discover it in time. The fourth chapter talked about the basic principles of curses. It was a high-level encryption for the use of completed monstrous strength. Low-level catalyst restriction. Blood restriction. Only a specific person's blood can be used. High-level catalyst restriction. Chakra restriction. Only a specific person's chakra restriction can be used. High-level catalyst restriction. Create a key similar to a monstrous strength. Theoretically, it could be anything, but complex monstrous strength usually uses a scroll as a medium. The fifth chapter talked about the use of monstrous strength. The monstrous strength vow seal was basically a summoning technique. After reading this book, Naruto entered his memory and looked at the Edo Tensei's spell formation again. He found that he could now understand its structure. It was just that he didn't understand the effects of its structure. But Naruto felt that it was just a matter of reading a few more books. Then he looked at the 4-symbol seal at the end of the Forbidden Technique scroll. Compared to the Edo Tensei, the structure of the 4-symbol seal was much clearer. Just as Naruto was about to get up and tell Tsunade that he was done reading, a voice outside attracted Naruto's attention. He heard Orochimaru and Sasuke's names. So he wasn't in a hurry to go out and listened attentively. Chapter 197. But to Naruto's disappointment, the ninja only mentioned that there was news about Sasuke and Orochimaru. Then there was silence. Naruto guessed that the information should be recorded in the scroll. He muttered, "I'll ask Tsunade-san directly. I don't know if she can tell me." After all, ninjas have a strong sense of confidentiality when it comes to important information. Even if it's their own family members, they won't say much. Unless it's related to the information, they won't be told. Naruto listened attentively. When he heard that there was no more sound outside, he knocked on the door and said, Tsunade-san, I'm done. Tsunade glanced at her watch. It's only been 10 minutes since she locked Naruto in. You really don't have the patience to read it? Sealing techniques are boring. She was afraid that Naruto didn't have the patience to learn. But she was relieved. If Naruto didn't like learning sealing techniques, it proved that Naruto didn't intend to learn Edo Tensei. After all, Edo Tensei requires the cooperation of sealing techniques and the establishment of a reincarnation circle. Naruto saw that no one was paying attention to him, so he knocked on the door again. Tsunade-san? I'm done. Give me another book. Another book. Tsunade froze for a moment. Reading a 600-page book in 10 minutes? T. However, when the door opened, Tsunade asked a few simple questions. All correct. She picked a few more difficult ones. Still correct. Tsunade's mouth twitched. Is he even human? You finished reading this book in 10 minutes? The truth was in front of her, but Tsunade still felt that it was nonsense. Naruto replied, to be precise, I finished reading it in 5 minutes. 5 minutes to read, leaving 600 pages. It takes 6 minutes to read a page in 1 second. No. 1 second to read a page is exactly 5 minutes. 1 minute and 60 seconds. Tsunade-san, I think I heard the names of Orochimaru and Sasuke just now. Can you tell me a little about this information? Tsunade took another seal book and handed it to Naruto. This book has 300 pages. If you can read it in 3 minutes, I'll tell you some information. This time, Tsunade didn't lock the door and stood beside Naruto. She wanted to see what Naruto thought. Naruto took the book and grinned. You said that you would show me the information about Sasuke and Orochimaru after I finish reading it in 3 minutes. Tsunade glanced at Naruto. She didn't say that she was going to show Naruto the information scroll. He only said that he would tell Naruto some information. However, she didn't think that Naruto could finish the book in 3 minutes. As for the previous book, she guessed that Naruto must have read it somewhere else. After all, basic books weren't as strictly regulated as advanced books, so it wasn't strange to see them in other places. Hurry up and read it. If you can really finish it in 3 minutes, I'll show you the information scroll. Naruto grinned. He liked this deal. He held the book and began to read. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. The paper brushed rhythmically, 1 page per glance, 3 pages per second. After 100 seconds, Naruto put down the book and replied, I'm done. Shizun looked over and pursed her lips. Obviously, Shizun didn't believe it either. Dolphin turned around and wagged his tail. His small eyes looked at the ceiling. It was obvious that he didn't believe it. Tsunade took the book and tested it. 10 questions. All correct. This time, she had to believe it. Tsunade-san, the information scroll. Tsunade looked at Naruto's eyes. Could this eye also see through things? Compared to reading 300 pages in 100 seconds, Tsunade was more willing to believe that Naruto could see through things. However, she still showed the information scroll to Naruto. Naruto took the information scroll and quickly pulled the scroll like a naughty child in the toilet. He finished reading it in 3 seconds. It recorded that Sasuke and the 4 sound ninjas who had appeared with Orochimaru in the wood leaf appeared in the Land of Fire. Sasuke's right hand was intact, and the other 4 sound ninjas were led by Sasuke. Then there was a partial record of the curse seal used by the 4 sound ninjas, as well as speculation that Sasuke was cursed. The information scroll was put away again, and Naruto returned the scroll to Tsunade. What Naruto wanted to see the most was about Sasuke's left hand. After all, that hand was crippled by Rasengan. If it was crippled, Naruto would feel a little guilty. How is Tsunade-san going to deal with Sasuke? This was a test to test Tsunade's attitude towards Orochimaru, and also to verify whether Orochimaru had traded Kato Duan with Tsunade. If he did, then Tsunade would definitely suspect that Orochimaru took the ashes. Tsunade took the scroll. The reason why Sasuke left the village has not been determined so far, so we can only take him back to the village and judge him later. Taking him back to the village means that Tsunade wants to catch Sasuke? After answering Naruto's question, Tsunade took out another book. Read this book again. If you can understand the content of this book, then you can go directly to the sealing class tomorrow to study by yourself. Naruto took the book from Tsunade's hand. Advanced Application Principles of Sealing Technique, Part 1. Part 1? Does that mean there's a possibility of middle and lower? Turning to the table of contents, Part 1. The Principle of Explosive Tag. Naruto's eyes lit up. Explosive tag. If he learned this trick, then he would have no pressure to use the explosive tag in the future. Part 2. The Principle of Making Contract Scrolls. Naruto's eyes lit up again. Contract scrolls are the scrolls to sign a contract with a summoned beast. There's no doubt that this is a great thing. If he learned it, he could sign Sasuke next time. Hee. It would be fun. Part 3. The Composition Relationship between Sealing Technique and Barrier Ninjutsu. What's this? Naruto wasn't sure, but Barrier Ninjutsu is a good thing. When Orochimaru killed Sandaime, the 4 Otogekure ninjas under him used Barrier Ninjutsu to isolate Sandaime Naruto and create a 1v1 situation. And Jiraiya's Tengai formation should also be a perception-type Barrier Ninjutsu. After that, there's nothing else. Naruto began to scan the books. In fact, Naruto didn't really remember Tsunade's test just now. The books he scanned were not recorded in his mind, but formed into a unique memory. It's like a forbidden technique scroll. When Tsunade tested him just now, Naruto directly flipped through the books in his memory and then answered the questions. Because the thinking in his memory is very fast. On the surface, it seemed that Naruto answered the questions. But to really remember it in his mind, Naruto would have to read it a few more times, or a few days. Advanced Application Principles of Sealing Technique, Part 1. The whole book has 120 pages, and Naruto finished it in 40 seconds. The first part of the Explosive Tags Production Principle only talked about several methods to seal chakra, and it didn't talk about the whole process of making it. The second part of the Contract Scroll was also the same. It only recorded the structure of a formation to enhance chakra's resonance frequency to distort space for space travel. The third part of the Sealing Technique and Barrier Ninjutsu was even less. It only talked about how to coordinate chakra with many people as the foundation of the formation. He had to say, it was a little disappointing. However, Naruto's understanding of sealing technique has improved a lot. It can be regarded as a rich experience. I'm done. Tsunade's mouth twitched as she asked, "Did you understand it?" Naruto thought for a moment. I don't really understand the structure of chakra's storage. As for the rest, it doesn't seem to have taught me anything substantial. Even if I did understand it, there's nothing I don't understand. Tsunade smiled and thought to herself, it's finally time for me, the master, to show up. How rare. Then she dragged a chair over and sat next to Naruto, opened the scroll, and began to draw. The most important part of the Ein seal is to seal chakra. This part of the knowledge is indeed the most important part for you. Naruto nodded repeatedly and prepared himself to listen to the lesson. 5 minutes later, Tsunade asked, "Do you understand?" Naruto nodded. Tsunade then took out a blank scroll. "Tell me what I told you." 1 minute later, Tsunade took a deep breath. Asterisk smack. Asterisk she raised her hand and placed it on Naruto's head. Her heart was filled with complex emotions as she said, "Go and report to the sealing class tomorrow." Naruto wouldn't come back from the sealing class in 1 day, would he? Then, after listening to the explanation of the Ein seal structure in the morning, he would learn the sealing class in the afternoon? Tsunade found that her thoughts were being distorted, so she couldn't help but reveal, "Naruto, if you can learn the Baihao technique in 30 days, then you can join the team I plan to form to hunt down Sasuke." Hunt down Sasuke? That sounds interesting. Chapter 198. Could Naruto learn Baihao Jutsu in 30 days? Naruto himself didn't know. but he was quite interested in hunting down Sasuke. So, he asked for permission to report to the sealing class today. Wouldn't it be better for the clumsy birds to fly early and sweep the books early? However, Tsunade denied it. Because the sealing class was on vacation today, Naruto noticed that today was Sunday. Tsunade waved her hand as if she was shooing away a fly. Take today as a vacation. Go back and rest. Training isn't something that can be done in a day. Rest. Naruto wanted to, but he didn't know what Danzo was plotting behind his back. He didn't dare to rest even if he wanted to. Then, should he continue training his monstrous strength? Tsunade said that he had the ability to use the pentatonic strength, but he couldn't even make the second membrane, Tsunade-san, the second membrane of the monstrous strength. Before Naruto could finish his sentence, Tsunade interrupted him. Naruto, you're not Dolphin. You can't always think about eating. You have to learn to think independently. Only then can you walk your own path. Otherwise, you'll just be walking my old path. Okay, what else could Naruto say? He could only obediently wave goodbye. Then, Tsunade-san. I'm going on vacation? Tsunade waved her hand again. Naruto also said goodbye to Shizune. Goodbye, Shizune-san? Shizune didn't even look up as she responded with an aha. Then, Naruto looked at Dolphin. Dolphin, do you want to go play with me? I have a lot of friends. Why did this sound like a perverted uncle who was trying to kidnap an ignorant child? Dolphin looked at Naruto. He had a conflicted expression on his face. To be honest, he kind of wanted to go, but he was afraid that Naruto would trick him. He couldn't help but look at Shizune. Naruto urged, Dolphin, can't you even decide on something like this? Do you have to ask your mother to go out and play? Mother. Shizune's mother? That was a good analogy. He didn't even need to curse. What was a pig's mother? Of course, it was a pig. Naruto never took his revenge overnight. Unfortunately, Mute didn't understand. At this moment, he was using his gaze to warn Tun-Tun. However, Tun-Tun didn't look at Mute. She jumped down from Naruto's desk and walked towards Naruto. It walked with its head held high and its chest puffed out, wagging its tail proudly. The meaning was very clear. Tun-Tun was a big child, so of course he didn't need his mother's permission. So Naruto ran away with Tubu in his arms, leaving only Tsunade, who was smiling, and Shizune, who was on the verge of exploding. Tun-Tun abandoned her. Mute's liver hurts. Have you forgotten who gave you the diarrhea candy? Have you forgotten who was by your side when you had a stomachache? You forgot. Sigh. Why did I raise such an ingrate? Naruto left Naruto's office. Along the way, all the passers-by cast kind glances at him. The halo of being Naruto's disciple was not for nothing. But, even though it's a holiday, what should I do? Find a friend to play with? In Woodleaf, there are Dingji, Shikamaru, and Ino. These three guys ate his barbecue for a week and got along with each other for a week. In theory, they can be considered as friends. I don't know if Dingji's gibbon technique continues to be carried forward. Is there anyone else? Xiao Li. Although Xiao Li didn't die from using the Hashiman Tonku because of him, he didn't have much interaction with Xiao Li. The only interaction, during Chunin's exam, his clone treated Xiao Li. Xiao Li. That was really a stain in his life. It's all because of that girl Tian Tian. Tian Tian shouldn't be his friend because every time he sees Tian Tian, he looks at her like she's the plague. Sigh. I actually helped someone who hates me. Naruto felt his personality suddenly grow. Who else is in Woodleaf's younger generation? Hinata Ningji definitely sees him as an enemy. He's the only one in Woodleaf who doesn't like him. Originally, he wanted to add Tooth Inuzuka, but Naruto settled it with a dog food recipe. As he was thinking, Naruto saw Sakura Haruno walking towards him with a stack of documents. Naruto. This girl can be considered as an ally. Ah, Sakura, you're... Naruto looked at the documents in Sakura's hands. It was information from the hospital. Sakura Haruno weighed the documents in her hands. Hwa-yu-sensei asked me to help her send some documents to Naruto-sama. Then she thought for a moment and added, I'm currently interning at the hospital. Naruto naturally knew that Sakura Haruno was interning at the hospital. After all, he was the one who recommended her. Naruto raised his finger and pointed at the documents. Do you need me to help you? Sakura Haruno shook her head repeatedly. No, these documents aren't heavy. Naruto nodded and said goodbye. Then bye-bye. After Naruto passed by Sakura Haruno with Tun-Tun, Sakura Haruno suddenly called out to Naruto, Naruto. Naruto turned around and looked at Sakura Haruno. Yes. Sakura Haruno bit her lip and said, Thank you for last time. Last time? Naruto knew that Sakura Haruno was referring to the time when Tsunade asked Sakura Haruno how she knew that Sasuke was taken away by Orochimaru. When Sakura Haruno was in a difficult position and didn't know how to answer, he was the one who put a cross in the middle of the conversation. This girl wasn't that stupid and wasn't that annoying. Naruto smiled and left with Tun-Tun. This was Naruto's building. There were too many eyes and ears, so it was best to speak less. Well, Sakura Haruno was one of his companions. Then in Woodleaf, among the younger generation, the only one he didn't interact with was Shino Yomi, who played with bugs. What next? Where was he going? Was he going to find Hinata to play? Thinking of Hinata, he hadn't seen her for a long time because she was busy cultivating. But in the end, Naruto returned to the store manager's house. Because the Ino Shikacho team was out on a mission, Xiao Li and Tion were the same. The only one left in the village was Tooth Inuzuka, but he wasn't home either. He went out to walk his dog. As for Hinata, the Hyuga main family's guards didn't seem to welcome him. He didn't know if they got the news that he was there. Tun-Tun looked at Naruto with disdain with his mung bean eyes. The meaning was self-evident. You're not that popular. How could you have any companions? Naruto whistled. Flutter. A huge grayish-brown owl landed on a branch on the side of the road in the store manager's yard. This owl was the one that Naruto controlled last time. When he woke up the next morning, Naruto saw it in the store manager's yard. At the same time, Naruto glanced to the side. On the other side of the road, there was a small black snake coiled around a tree. It was also the same one that he controlled last time. Naruto didn't know why these two guys stuck to him after the mental link, but the store manager's yard was big enough, so Naruto didn't care. But Little Gunny liked them very much and even gave them names. The snake was called Shameless, and the owl didn't inherit Hedwig's name because Little Gunny insisted on calling it Big Fatty. Go, Tun-Tun. Go play with Shameless and Big Fatty. Tun-Tun looked at the owl, then looked at the black snake with a confused expression. Naruto put Tun-Tun down and left it alone. Then, Big Fatty swooped down from the tree and used its unique method to show its goodwill. It picked up the pig and then flew into the sky. Naruto looked back and nodded with satisfaction. They should become companions. So what should he do next? Last time, he thought about using the Yang attribute chakra membrane to wrap the Rasengan. Since he had nothing to do today, he could give it a try. If it works, then the Rasengan can be used for long-range attacks. Naruto went to study the Rasengan. The pig screamed in the sky. Chapter 199. The Long-Range Rasengan. Be born. On the martial arts field outside the store manager's villa, the chakra was rapidly gathering, rotating, and compressing in Naruto's hands. The next step was to wrap the Rasengan with a layer of Yang chakra film. Done. Go. Pikachu. As if throwing a pokeball, Naruto threw the Rasengan wrapped in a film in a straight line. 1 meter, 2 meters. Bang. The ball exploded. Was this considered a success or a failure? It seemed to be a success because he really threw it. But throwing it 2 meters didn't seem to have any effect. And he wasn't sure if the power of the Rasengan was still there. Let's test the power first. If the power is still there, at least it proves a certain degree of feasibility. I'll think about other things later. Naruto found a wooden target, stood 2 meters away, and then gathered the chakra again. This time, Naruto didn't call Pikachu. He wanted to carefully observe the power of this blow. The Rasengan wrapped in the yang chakra film shot 2 meters straight and hit the wooden target. Bang! The wooden target exploded. The power was still there, but it seemed to have been reduced a little. It was worth mentioning that chakra had the characteristic of not being affected by gravity. This characteristic could even affect physical objects. For example, if a stone was thrown, it would definitely slide in a parabola. But if chakra was injected into the stone, the arc of the parabola would be reduced. Simply put, it weakened the gravity on the stone. And the higher the density of chakra in the stone, the less the influence of gravity on the stone. The relationship between the two was inversely proportional. Chakra gathered in his hand, and Naruto carefully observed the Rasengan wrapped in a film in his hand. This Rasengan was like an egg. The Rasengan was the egg yolk, the yang chakra film was the eggshell, and the egg white was the part of the chakra released from the Rasengan. The released chakra was compressed by the yang chakra film in a closed environment to stabilize the Rasengan in the middle, but part of the chakra was released, so the power was reduced. After finding the reason, Naruto experimented again. This time, he increased the compression of chakra. So the total amount of chakra increased, the power also increased. So why did it only maintain a distance of 2 meters? No, he couldn't use distance as a limit. More accurately speaking, why did it only last for 1 second after leaving his hand? Opening 2 of the Hashman Tonku, Naruto was ready to use the enhanced vision of Hashman Tonku to observe carefully. Once again through the Rasengan with the yang chakra film. Naruto stared at the Rasengan that was released from his hand. This time, Naruto saw more clearly. After it was released from his control, the Rasengan began to expand outward. The high-speed rotation of chakra inside the Rasengan spread out, cutting the film on the surface. In short, it was the stability of the Rasengan. This was the old problem of the Rasengan being unable to be released. Once it was released, it would go out of control. After all, the Rasengan was originally in an unstable state. Was there really no way to solve it? Naruto sat cross-legged on the ground, holding his cheek with his right hand as he thought. He had a hunch that he could solve this problem, but, thinking about it carefully, he didn't know what it was. It was like a layer of window paper. Unable to think of a reason, Naruto practiced his monstrous strength. Monstrous strength. The inner film expanded outward. Naruto called this film the Zero Film. The strength of this film was determined by the resonance of chakra with the body and the power of chakra. The stronger the eruption of chakra, the greater the tension. The outer film contracted inward, and the expanding inner film compressed the chakra between the two. When he punched, the outer film opened up, and the compressed chakra burst out. It felt like an air gun. Thinking of the air gun, Naruto had an idea. He picked up a stone and prepared to use monstrous strength to shoot the stone in his hand out. Bang! The stone didn't shoot out. Instead, it was directly shattered by the explosion of chakra. For a moment, smoke and dust flew and scattered on Naruto's face. Dumbfounded. This kind of thing was natural. A punch with monstrous strength could smash the ground 5 meters deep. How could a stone withstand this kind of power? Naruto maintained this posture and thought of something. What if it was a Rasengan wrapped in a film? Naruto tried again with the stone. The surface of the stone was wrapped in a layer of yang chakra film. This time, the stone was shot out and flew for an unknown distance. There's a way. Under monstrous strength mode, the Rasengan wrapped in a film gathered in his hand. At the same time, he accumulated monstrous strength and shot it out. The Rasengan in his hand disappeared and shot into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared for an unknown distance. A second later, there was an explosion in the sky. Naruto's eyes widened, and joy appeared on his face. Does this count as a success? This is a long-range attack. Although the stability of the Rasengan was not solved, because of its fast speed, it flew a greater distance in a second. But if the stability of the Rasengan could be solved, then it would be even further. Well, because chakra ignored gravity, in theory, if the chakra didn't disperse, it could be shot into the universe. Of course, the premise was that it had to break through the atmosphere. Stability. Naruto continued to think, and soon came up with an idea. Increasing the thickness of the film would increase the elasticity and increase the pressure in the ball. Would the Rasengan be stable under high pressure? Naruto condensed the Rasengan in his hand again. It was wrapped in a film, and the yang chakra continued to pour into the film. The overall volume of the Rasengan began to shrink. From a diameter of 1 decimeter to the size of a ping-pong ball, Naruto could feel that the Rasengan was still spinning inside. He had to feel it more carefully. Warning signs suddenly appeared. The spinning chakra was out of control. Naruto didn't hesitate and threw out the Rasengan in his hand. 5 meters away, the red Rasengan suddenly exploded. The air swept around, and Naruto's clothes fluttered. At the same time, there was sand in his mouth. Bah! Naruto spat out the sand in his mouth and sighed. It seems that increasing the thickness of the film is not enough. However, Naruto still had a premonition that he could solve the stability of the Rasengan. It seemed that he had thought of this method before. This premonition was strong, but he just couldn't remember. In the sky, Dolphin, who had been flying for a long time, flew back. Defei put Dolphin on the roof of the 4th floor. When Dolphin flew back, he didn't scream. Naruto nodded with satisfaction. It seemed that Dolphin had begun to enjoy the feeling of flying in the air. Then Naruto continued to think about his own problem, how to solve the problem of the stability of the Rasengan. On the roof of the 4th floor, Dolphin was foaming at the mouth and rolling his eyes. Defei tilted his head and looked at the pig rolling its eyes, then raised his paw and hit it. Originally, he just wanted to call the pig, but who knew that the pig's body was too round. After being hit by the owl, it was like a ball rolling in the other direction of the roof. Defei thought that Dolphin was playing with it, so he kicked it out. Next, the pig was thrown flat on the roof of the 4th floor. Dolphin was so scared that he cried and screamed as he accelerated. Defei swooped down, grabbed Dolphin when he was about to hit the ground, and then rose again. Exciting the pig to death. On the other side of the dojo, Naruto stared at the Rasengan wrapped in a film in his hand. It was like an old witch looking at the crystal ball in her hand, trying to see the trajectory of fate in the crystal ball. For a long time, the shadow of the white clouds floated several times, and Naruto suddenly said, "Do you want to use the principle of monstrous force on the Rasengan and establish a zero-layer film on the surface of the Rasengan?" When he said this, Naruto felt that the layer of window paper in front of his heart suddenly opened. There was a premonition. It seemed feasible. Chapter 200. After thinking it through, he succeeded? No. Naruto bounced himself away. In an instant, he shot out like a human cannon. If it wasn't for the angle parallel to the ground and the 15-centimeter thick steel plate around the training field outside the store manager's house, Naruto would have traveled at least a kilometer. The function of the zero-layer membrane was to absorb chakra and expand outwards. The absorbed chakra could be ordinary chakra or yang attribute chakra. The only difference was the degree of increase in elasticity. With the same amount, if the ordinary chakra's elasticity was doubled, then the yang attribute chakra's elasticity would be tenfold. Therefore, the moment Naruto successfully built the zero-layer membrane, the membrane swallowed chakra's Rasengan and instantly expanded. Naruto didn't have time to dodge and was directly bounced away. Then, should he add an inwardly compressed membrane on the outside? It would work, but if the Rasengan was swallowed, how could he launch it? What a pain in the ass. In the original world, the reason why Naruto's Rasengan could be launched was because he was learning Senjutsu. Then, if he wanted to develop a Rasengan that could be launched remotely, would he have to wait until he learned Senjutsu? Or, should he modify the membrane? The outer membrane would contract inwardly, and it would only contract when it swallowed yang attribute chakra. Then, should he change it to an outer membrane? Wouldn't that be back to the original experiment? Unable to find a good solution, Naruto could only ask Nine Tails, Nine Llamas, Sensei, how do you shoot Bijidama? Nine Tails lazily replied, I also want to show you, but I can't go out. Naruto rolled his eyes. He didn't ask Nine Tails to demonstrate, he just asked the principal. One dessert, eat it immediately. Nine Tails raised his eyelids. 10, eat it immediately. That's too many, I feel like I've gained weight recently. 5. Nine Tails yawned and asked, aren't you cute when you're chubby? For example, isn't that pig quite likable? That pig. Tun Tun. Speaking of which, where did Tun Tun go? Naruto strained his ears to listen for any movement in the surroundings, but he did not hear any pig cries. He probably flew out again. They got along very well. Shameless Snake liked to fly around, but Big Fatty was too lazy to bring Shameless Snake along. The fatter you are, the cuter you are. Humans are different. To humans, beauty and ugliness are just one sentence. Whiteness covers all ugliness, while fatness destroys everything. Nine Tails rolled its eyes. Of course, it knew what human aesthetics were like. After all, its previous human pillar force were all women. He just wanted to make a dig at Naruto. Forget it. I'll let him go today. Nine Tails thought for a while and replied, 5 it is. He said, the Bijidama is a combination of chakra with yin and yang attributes according to 2:8. At the same time, because of the yin and yang chakra's characteristics, it does not need to rotate. The rotation is just to maintain the normal chakra. Okay, I've told you the key, go eat your dessert. Naruto blinked. That's it? Nine Tails replied, that's it. The theory is very simple, the key is the practice. Naruto was confused, but I don't have a yin attribute chakra. Nine Tails raised its eyebrows and replied, what a coincidence, I don't have one either. Naruto rolled his eyes. He wanted to express that Nine Tails' theory was of no help to him at all. Naruto shook his head and thought about it himself. To maintain the rotation of the chakra, a Rasengan that did not rotate was not a Rasengan at all. The most important thing was that if he could shoot out the Rasengan, then he could directly use the wind release Shuriken Rasengan. He was very familiar with the changes in the nature of the wind attribute chakra. If possible, he was confident that he could create the wind release Shuriken Rasengan right now. That was a killer weapon. Nine Tails saw that Naruto had no intention of eating dessert and urged, what about your promise? Naruto replied, your theory is of no use to me. Nine Tails' face darkened, you're not going to trade in the future. Naruto thought for a while, then I'll eat one. Kyuubi's hair stood on end as she roared, we agreed on 5. Naruto spread his hands, but your information is of no use to me. Nine Tails repeated, then we're not going to trade in the future. Naruto replied, I'm going to lose weight recently. I'll eat dessert next month. You're not going to trade? Then I won't have any dessert. Nine Tails grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Shameless. After the final negotiation, Naruto ate 2 desserts. After eating, he returned to the training field. Then, he continued to think of ways to improve. 5 minutes later, Naruto looked at the sky. 10 minutes later, Naruto continued to look at the sky. Half an hour later, Naruto continued to look at the sky. What should I do? My liver hurts. But, if I change it to something else, it won't be so difficult. For example, ice release. Naruto raised his hand and an icicle appeared in his hand. He shot it with monstrous force. The result was the same as a stone. The icicle exploded instantly. Naruto was stunned. His ice release was not as strong as a film? How could it be? Wait, could it be a problem with the structure? Then, Naruto changed the icicle to an ice ball. This time, it was a success. It turned out that compared to an irregular object, a sphere could withstand more pressure. This made Naruto think of holding an egg. But, in terms of destructive power, the cone was still stronger. Then, should I change it to a bullet? This time, he shot it. The oval-shaped ice bullet was able to withstand more pressure. But it missed. Affected by the airflow, it missed quite a bit. How could he improve it? The bullet stabilized itself by rotating. So, Naruto rotated the ice bullet. But this made it difficult to shoot. After some improvement, Naruto wrapped the ice bullet with a film. The ice bullet spun rapidly in the chakra bubble. Because the bubble was filled with chakra and not air, the friction was minimal and the penetration was guaranteed. The ice bullet was successful, and the trajectory was very straight. Naruto stared at the bullet disappearing in the sky and said to himself, after the ice bullet is fired, the rotation of the ice bullet will continue to rotate due to inertia, and there is no air resistance in the chakra bubble, and the stability is excellent. So, why can't the Rasengan maintain its rotation? The ice bullet could maintain its rotation, but the Rasengan could not. This was very unreasonable. The only difference between the ice bullet and the Rasengan was the degree of materialization. The so-called materialization was the name given by Naruto. Naruto defined chakra as semi-materialization because chakra could penetrate and hit objects. Obviously, the ice bullet formed by the ice element chakra was stronger than the ordinary chakra. Because before the ice bullet disintegrated into chakra, it could not freely penetrate objects like chakra. Was this the reason? Or was the rotation of the Rasengan too complicated? The rotation of the ice bullet was in one direction, but the rotation of the Rasengan was in one direction from all directions. Then why could it be maintained after learning the Sage technique? Was it because of some other characteristics of the force of nature? Naruto raised his hand, and a chakra bubble appeared in his hand. He injected the ice element chakra, and a sharp ice bullet was immediately ready, and then it spun at high speed in the bubble. Strange power, shot. Boom! The ice bullet disappeared in his hand, and it was shot into a cloud. The cloud was shot through. This shooting distance was awesome. If he was given a pair of Byakugan, he could definitely shoot from a very long distance. The enemy did not even see him, and he killed them with an ice bullet. Cool. Naruto looked at the cloud and thought of the rain technique. Taking out a detonation talisman and putting it on the ice bullet, Naruto licked his lips. How many seconds did it take for the ice bullet to hit the cloud? 5 seconds? Or 6 seconds? Naruto continued to inject the ice element chakra into the ice bullet, and the original ice bullet gradually expanded into a fist-sized ice ball. Naruto felt that it was about time, and the young element chakra film wrapped around it, and the ice ball began to spin. Naruto aimed at the big cloud in the sky. Strange power, first gear. Shoot. Boom. The ice ball shot out in a straight line like a cannonball. Naruto made a seal with one hand while counting the seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Explode. The cloud shot through and began to roll. Boom. Like thunder, Naruto saw the cloud flash, and the timing was just right. The cold air exploded in the cloud, and the temperature plummeted. The water vapor in the cloud condensed, and then it started to rain. Naruto grinned, and the second kick rain bullet could be retired. This move would be called rain bullet in the future, perfect. At the same time, Defei, who was taking Tun for a spin in the sky, was a little confused. Why did it suddenly rain? Fortunately, the rain wasn't heavy, and the oil on its feathers could completely resist it. Then, should it fly in the rain for a while more? Defei was still flying, and Tun's heart was broken. Although the rain wasn't heavy, it was surprisingly cold. Tun shivered and sneezed. It's over. Tun was so sad, and tears couldn't help but flow out. Anyway, it was raining, and no one should see it crying now. Thus, Tun cried even more sadly. I want to go home. Sob, sob, sob. I don't want to fly anymore. Sob, 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 sob. Tun was so sad. Defei listened to Tun's screams, and the corners of its mouth curled up slightly, and its eyes had a trace of ridicule. Master carried this guy back, and Master didn't even carry it, humph. Let's throw it into the air 2 more times. Defei flapped its wings, and its head flew straight into the sky, facing the rain. It also felt a little cold, and some of its feathers were a little wet, but this wasn't important. What was important was that it had to treat this stupid pig well today. After flying to a certain height, Defei released its grip. The pig began to fall in free fall. Then, before the pig fell to the ground, it was caught again and lifted into the air again. Tun Tun cried bitterly. It made up its mind that it would listen to Mother Jingyin in the future and ignore Naruto. Sob 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 sob. This is really bullying pigs. Sob 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 sob. Although we don't speak the same language, can't you see that I don't want to fly anymore? Sob 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 sob. Stupid owl, how did your brain grow? Sob 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 sob. Chapter 201. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, a month passed. And Naruto also stayed in the sealing class for a month. This made Tsunade very surprised. She originally thought that Naruto would return triumphantly from the sealing class in 1 day, then learn the Ien seal on the 2nd day, understand the Baihao Jutsu on the 3rd day, and finish the apprenticeship on the 4th day. Tsunade knew that this was bullshit, but didn't Naruto always come up with bullshit? Could it be that he took too big a step in the past, so he pulled his balls? Shizen, Naruto hasn't been here for a while, right? The afternoon sun shined in Naruto's office, and it was so warm that people couldn't help but want to yawn. So Tsunade yawned and lazily stretched. The deep V-neck shirt pulled out amazing curves while stretching, showing the temptation of taboo. Shizen was surprised by the question, and it took her a while to remember that there was a person called Naruto. TSK, I really haven't seen that guy for a long time. She replied, calculating the time. It should be since that guy joined the sealing class. I don't think I've seen him. Tsunade's chair turned, and the sun entered her eyes, and she couldn't help but sneeze, muttering, oh, maybe that guy is also thinking about me, his master, Then should I go to the sealing class to see what that little guy is doing? Shizen was speechless, thinking that you're the one who wants to see that guy. Without Naruto, that shit stirring up trouble, these days were so comfortable. There was no fear, no anger, and no one to steal Tun from her. Thinking about Tun, Shizen was very satisfied, and Tun has been a lot more obedient recently. So she kissed Tun's forehead. Tun hummed and enjoyed it very much, thinking that pig life should be like this. But, thinking about it, it's been quite boring recently. This idea is dangerous. Tun shook his head again and again. He wouldn't think about that heartless guy. Then, what is Naruto doing? In a separate room in the sealing class, Naruto sat in a small room that was about 10 square meters in size. Beside him was a pile of messy things. The scrolls that were rolled up were scattered all over the floor. There were also many prosthetic parts, wooden shells, alloy shells, and all sorts of other things. Some parts were also imprinted with strange symbols, which were the marks left behind by the sealing technique. This was also Naruto's current research topic, which was to integrate the sealing technique into Chakra's artificial limb to reduce the loss of Chakra's power and increase the size of the artificial limb that could be controlled. Before this, after coming to the sealing class, Naruto spent a day reading all the books available to him. That night, Naruto started learning the 4-symbol seal on the Forbidden Technique scroll with these huge knowledge points. This was because Naruto discovered that the 4-symbol sealing technique was simpler than the Edo Tensei. Naturally, he had to start from a simple point of view. Therefore, with the help of the knowledge system formed by the memory chip, Naruto understood very quickly. He also separated out the knowledge points that he did not understand and consulted different people separately. In 2 days, Naruto thoroughly understood the theory of the 4-symbol seal. On the 3rd day, he encountered some problems in practice. He summarized the problems and consulted others again. On the 4th day, he finally learned the 4-symbol seal. On the 5th day, Naruto began learning the Edo Tensei. After learning the Edo Tensei, Naruto realized that the knowledge points involved in the Edo Tensei were really difficult. Most importantly, there were many knowledge points that he could not ask others for, such as the principle of the reincarnation array's soul gathering, and the second step of successfully performing the Edo Tensei's corpse coffin, which involved corpse nurturing. Therefore, Naruto could only dig out the knowledge points that involved taboos and settle the other knowledge points first, such as the contract used in the Edo Tensei array and the psychic link used after reincarnation. Contract and psychic link could be seen as one, which was equivalent to a complete psychic link. It was not a spell that just required a fingerprint. It was a series of knowledge points, from how to make a contract scroll to signing a contract. On the 5th day, he started learning the theory. On the 6th day, he summarized the practical results. On the 7th day, he found someone to answer his questions after failing to perform the spell again. On the 8th day, he finally succeeded. On the 9th day, he stole the forbidden technique scroll that was not open to him. The theft failed. All the scrolls that involved secrets were encrypted. With Naruto's current level, he could not handle it. On the 10th day, Naruto borrowed the forbidden technique on behalf of Tsunade as her disciple. There was a high possibility that this trick would be discovered. However, Naruto had no other choice but to memorize it first. If Tsunade asked about it, he would pretend to be stupid. However, to Naruto's surprise, the librarian did not suspect him and even asked him, "Didn't Tsunade borrow it before?" The moment he heard this, Naruto understood that Tsunade must be studying the Edo Tensei as well. Then, Naruto successfully borrowed it on the grounds that he wanted to read it again. What was even more amazing was that he did not even need to write a file. He only said that he would return it in 7 days. Naruto's eyes did not need 7 days. After scanning it in 5 minutes, he returned it in the time it took him to go to the toilet. He only said that he remembered wrongly and that Tsunade wanted to borrow another book. The librarian just rolled his eyes at him. It could not be any smoother. The knowledge points were successfully obtained. However, because he could not find anyone to consult, Naruto's progress also slowed down. It was not until the 15th day that he finally understood the knowledge points about soul congregation after a lot of experiments. Then, on the 20th day, he successfully made a corpse coffin of a mouse. The main theoretical knowledge was to make creatures enter hibernation and slow down their metabolism. This was also applicable to humans. Naruto even made a sleeping coffin for himself. It felt great. He could freeze the opening time of the library and sleep until dawn every day. The only flaw was the safety of the coffin. After all, after entering hibernation, the person inside the coffin would have almost zero perception of the outside world, so it was relatively dangerous. Logically speaking, Naruto could leave the sealing class on the 21st day to find Tsunade and start the next step of learning. That way, he might really be able to complete the great feat of completing the apprenticeship in 30 days. However, halfway through, Naruto had other ideas. What he was doing now was to use the sealing technique on the prosthetic limb. This research took 10 days. Naruto picked up a pen and drew on a prosthetic limb. The ink used in the sealing technique was a special ink that could record techniques. In Naruto's understanding, it was equivalent to the electronic integrated circuits in his previous life, and the various seals were electronic components. It was very magical. However, drawing seals was a task that consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Those with weak spiritual energy would not be able to do it. This world did not have a ranking system for spiritual energy. It was still determined by the amount of chakra. Because chakra was the combination of spiritual energy and vitality, people with low chakra would definitely have a shortcoming in vitality and spiritual energy. When Naruto finished drawing the last seal, he finally breathed a sigh of relief, closed his eyes for a while, and rested for a while before starting the test. The prosthetic arm was extremely flexible and made various movements in Naruto's hand, and it reacted quickly with almost no delay. Obviously, he succeeded. Something called a sense of accomplishment spontaneously arose, and Naruto smiled with satisfaction. Then what should he do next? Start developing a combat prosthetic limb? It's quite interesting. Or, practice the Edo Tensei? Naruto has only reincarnated rat before, but obviously, that can't be regarded as a true Edo Tensei. Just as Naruto was thinking about what to do next, there was a knock on the door, and Tsunade's voice came in at the same time. Is the person inside still alive? If he's alive, answer me. Naruto in the room blinked and replied, Squeak squeak. Squeak. Outside, Tsunade raised her eyebrows and asked the member of the ceiling class with an awkward expression, Are you sure this room belongs to Naruto and not a mouse? The young man who led the way in the ceiling class twitched his mouth awkwardly. He sighed in his heart. To be able to talk to Naruto, someone like this, the person in this room was indeed like the legends, someone who was close to Naruto. That's right, even someone like him who had stayed here for 3 or 4 years didn't manage to get a single room. It's incomparable. Chapter 202. What? A month has already passed? Naruto's roar could be heard in the ceiling class. Many people were dumbfounded. The young man who was the closest to Zhang Tai only felt a buzzing sound in his head as if someone had put an iron bucket over his head and fiercely hit it with a bang. She felt terrible. She wanted to flare up, but she didn't dare to. He thought, this guy is shouting in front of Naruto. Will Sir Naruto punish him? The young man was looking forward to it, but the truth was that it wasn't. Tsunade laughed out loud. Then how many days do you think have passed? Naruto started counting with his fingers. On the first day, he read all the books that were open to him. On the 4th day, he learned the 4-symbol seal. On the 8th day, he learned how to create the summoning contract scroll. On the 15th day, he learned the soul congregation array. On the 21st day, the corpse coffin was completed. On the 22nd day, he combined the sealing technique with the artificial limb. Naruto said uncertainly, Shouldn't it have only been 22 days? Tsunade rolled her eyes. You're confused, aren't you? However, it is indeed easy to become muddle-headed after studying sealing techniques for a long time. Let's go. Today, Big Sister will treat you to a meal and take a stroll. If you continue studying, I'm afraid you will become stupid. Naruto took a deep breath and pursed his lips. Had he become muddle-headed? No. Something must have gone wrong. Naruto began to recall everything from the beginning to the end. He reconnected the 22 days in his memory. However, he couldn't find anything wrong with it. He thought about it again and recalled something. On the 21st day, he successfully built a corpse coffin for his Edo Tensei rat. Then, he built one for himself and experienced. One time, growing up, one day, hibernating. Could it be that the problem was with the corpse coffins? Did I set the wrong time for the corpse coffin? Therefore, the time after the corpse coffin was opened was not 1 day, but 7 days? F***ck. It can't be that bad, right? My 7 days. Gone just like that. Wait a minute, Tsunade-ne-san. I want to confirm something before we go to dinner. Naruto looked back, picked up a blank scroll on the ground, and then picked up the pen and started to draw. Tsunade took the opportunity to glance at Naruto's hut and sighed, This house is messy enough. It seems that you've been studying hard these days. Then he saw the artificial limb covered in runes. What is this? Tsunade walked over and picked up the prosthetic limb, injected it into it, and tested it. The prosthetic limb began to move according to her instructions. Tsunade's eyes widened and she asked in surprise, You actually solved the problem of the prosthetic limb delay with the sealing technique in the past 30 days. Naruto continued to draw as he replied in his heart, It only took me 1 morning to complete that piece of trash. The last few strokes were finished. A complicated seal pattern appeared on the scroll. The young man who led the way for Tsunade glanced at it casually, and then his eyes were attracted to it. He looked at it carefully, and after understanding it, he exclaimed, This is a timing pattern? And it's a high-level pattern with very precise timing. Naruto just nodded. At the same time, he flipped through the books about timing patterns in his memory. After comparing the two, Naruto found that he was right. According to the book, it was 1 day. So the problem wasn't with the corpse coffin? Tsunade also came over at this time and looked at Naruto's pattern together. It was a very beautiful pattern. Each line was drawn extremely accurately and clearly, without any bad writing habits. It was perfect. Tsunade praised Naruto's talent in her heart, and at the same time praised herself for making the wisest choice to accept Naruto as her apprentice. If such a smart apprentice was taught to a fool like Jiraiya, he wouldn't be able to learn anything. This pattern means that it's set to 7 days, right? Tsunade asked. This surprised Naruto, who had already ruled out the problem with the corpse coffin. He hurriedly asked Tsunade, "Tsunade-san, are you sure it's 7 days?" Tsunade raised her hand and pointed at the symbol on the pattern. The year is 0, and the day is set to 7. Isn't it 7 days? This symbol means 7? The book clearly recorded that it was 1. Do you have to trick your papa Naruto like this? Tsunade-san, wait a moment, I'll go get the book. Naruto was extremely fast, 10 times the speed of an ordinary chakra, and he had already disappeared. This surprised the young man who was leading the way. He sighed in his heart. As expected of Naruto, Sama's little favorite, his strength seemed to be very strong. 20 seconds later, Naruto came back like a gust of wind with a book in his hand. 375 pages. Naruto compared the records in the book. Well, the records in the book were exactly the same as the ones in his memory. Naruto's mouth twitched. He found the problem. He was tricked by a book. Then the knowledge about time counting needs to be sorted out. Otherwise, if he set 1 day 1 month, but in fact, a year has passed, that would be funny. Tsunade-san, are there any symbols in this book that are wrong? Tsunade took the book, glanced at it, and raised her eyebrows. Then she closed the book and looked at the back of the book that recorded the publication edition and time, and complained, "Naruto, where did you find this antique book?" "Huh. It's the first edition, it should be worth a lot of money." Well, the tragedy caused by a book ended here. In the end, only 1 and 7 were reversed. Fortunately, this was the case, otherwise, 0 and the other ones would be reversed. Naruto would sleep for a few years. That would be really funny. Coincidentally, the new edition of the book that recorded the time symbols was borrowed by someone else on the day Naruto swept the book. Funny, after figuring out the reason, Naruto and Tsunade went out to find a place to eat. Because they weren't very hungry, they went to the tricolor meatball shop to eat meatballs. At the dining table, Naruto looked at Tsunade and said, "Tsunade-san, did the team that hunted Sasuke really set off?" Tsunade chewed the meatball and replied, "They set off yesterday. An Umbu ninja found Sasuke's whereabouts, and then set off." Well, I missed it. If I didn't make a coffin for myself, forget it, I missed it. The time symbol is still very important. It's a good result to be able to correct it in this way. As for Sasuke, it's definitely not so easy to hunt him down. It's difficult to catch him at once, so I still have a chance. Then, who went after Sasuke? It can't be Shikamaru and the others, right? If it's them, I feel like it's over. The development of the current world has deviated from the original world, and the enemy can't give them a chance to defeat them one by one. The 4 people from Otogakure who can enter the second state of Curse Seal, if they join forces, they might be wiped out. Tsunade ate another meatball and replied, "Umbu ninja." Huh. It's not the younger generation. But it's reasonable to think about it. Shikamaru hasn't been promoted to Chunin, so it's impossible for him to lead the team. Sasuke also ran away before Tsunade came back. In addition, Tsunade is eager to know the whereabouts of Orochimaru, so she will definitely go all out. Would Leaf Umbu ninja? Kakashi seems to have regained the identity of an Umbu ninja. Then, is Kakashi-sensei still in the village? Naruto looked at Tsunade. Tsunade smiled and said, "Little rascal, he's leading the team this time. Naturally, he's not here. Kakashi is leading the team? In that case, missing out on this pursuit was also quite good. If I go on a mission with Kakashi, when I go outside, Naruto is afraid that I'll be abandoned. Well, I have to seize the time to improve my strength. If I can beat Kakashi, hee hee, Naruto felt that the scene would be very interesting. He couldn't help but smile. At the same time, he asked Tsunade for instructions. Tsunade-san, can you teach me the Yin seal after dinner? I think I can learn it now. Tsunade waved her hand. Tomorrow, I'm finally free today. I don't want to do any mental activities. Then she narrowed her eyes. After dinner, let's go see how the construction of the casino is going? Naruto can only say, okay, whatever Tsunade-san says. Helpless, Naruto continued to eat meatballs. Tsunade raised her hand to rub Naruto's head. She wanted to reward Naruto for being obedient and sensible. When she raised her hand, she suddenly froze. She found that the seal on Naruto's head was gone. So, Naruto lifted the seal. Or did someone else help him? She asked. Naruto, the seal on your head. Naruto rolled his eyes. I removed it. When he thought of the seal on his head, Naruto's balls hurt. No wonder Degeno and Gaoni would look at his head when they were bored. He originally thought they were looking at his bald head, but after knowing about the seal, he realized that they were looking at that point. There are no monks in this world, but a bald head with a point in the middle is bound to be particularly eye-catching. In Jiraiya's words, when people see a piece of white paper, their eyes will wander because they don't know where to look. If there is a point on the white paper, their eyes will gradually focus on that point. This is what Jiraiya said when he taught Naruto Rasengan in the development of the original world. Tsunade smiled. I also want to encourage you, so I sealed your hair. Naruto curled his lips and knew it was Tsunade. He asked the ninth lamas in his heart, you know that Tsunade sealed my hair, ninth lama sensei, right? Nine Tails didn't answer. Nine Tails was sleeping soundly. Naruto's mouth twitched. Tsunade changed the topic. Since you can remove my seal on your own, it means that you have the ability to learn the Yin seal. Naruto couldn't help but roll his eyes again. He has learned the four-symbol seal and Edo Tensei, so of course he can learn the Yin seal. Then I'll learn in the afternoon? Tsunade made a pitiful face. Your sister wants to go shopping. Then she looked at Naruto eagerly. Naruto felt his liver hurt. Chapter 203. At the Tricolor Meatball Shop, Naruto and Tsunade finished the last meatball in their hands. Tsunade suddenly asked, by the way, Naruto, do you want to have another junior sister? Naruto was stunned. Tsunade's question made him feel like a mother asking her son for a second child. For example, son, do you want another younger brother or sister? Funny, but it can be seen that Tsunade still cares about her apprentice. Naruto smiled. If you want to take her, then take her. I don't know whose child is so lucky. When Tsunade heard Naruto agree, her eyes curved into a smile. A reasonable apprentice brother is the most likable. She replied, it's Sakura Haruno, who you recommended to me before. That child's talent in medical ninjutsu is not bad. If I don't teach her something, it will be a waste. Sakura Haruno? To be honest, Tsunade should be Sakura Haruno's master. He was the one who took her place. Although he didn't need to pay for the opportunity in life, if Tsunade took Sakura Haruno as her disciple, it would also be a good result. When the sect is strong, the morale will be high. Junior sister. Then he is the senior brother. To be reasonable, doesn't junior sister often warm the bed for the senior brother? This is a bit wrong. If Uchiha knew, he would probably kill him. This could be seen from the fact that he had given Xiao Li a good beating. Although Uchiha didn't say it, he still cared about Sakura. Okay, does that girl know you want to take her? Among the 12 wood leaf roaches, Sakura Haruno had the least background. She didn't have a family background, and she didn't have a family inheritance. If Tsunade didn't take her, she would probably be useless. At best, she would transform into a pure medical ninjutsu like Hana Fujita. Tsunade smiled and said, I haven't told her yet. Naruto suggested, why don't we go and inform her now, and then we can go back and learn the Yin seal together? Tsunade rolled her eyes. Sakura Haruno had just mastered the basics of medical ninjutsu. She learned the Een seal from her and got up to ask Naruto to leave. Let's go shopping for your brain. Accompanying Naruto shopping, naturally, there were a lot of greetings along the way. At first, the two thought it was quite interesting, but gradually, they became annoyed. In the end, Tsunade directly changed her appearance with transformation jutsu. In addition, after Naruto had shaved his head, not many people recognized Naruto, so the two of them finally had some peace and quiet. Passing by a clothing store, Tsunade was about to walk by when Naruto stopped and pointed to the clothing store. Since we're shopping, we should look at the clothes and buy some clothes or something, right? Therefore, the two of them first bought clothes and shoes. Then they went to see the construction of the casino, the themed pastry shop, and the ninja store. The construction of the 3 building frames has been completed. In fact, it could have been built faster, but Naruto drew a general architectural style and asked them to build according to his drawings. Therefore, the craftsmen carried out in-depth research on the load-bearing and structure of the new style of building, so the construction period was slowed down. Naruto's design was a large A-shaped building that could be connected by 3 buildings. Of the 5 locations, 2 were built as ninja stores, 1 was a themed pastry shop, and 2 were built as casinos. There were 2 parallel passages connecting the casino and the ninja store, and the themed pastry shop in the middle. It formed a large market that could be independent and connected. In fact, Naruto thought about whether to make it into a supermarket and rent a store. If he rented, Naruto planned to change the lower 2 floors of the ninja store into a stall, but he didn't know if the store manager would allow it. After shopping with Tsunade, Naruto sent Tsunade home when the sun was setting. Tsunade-san, it's a promise. Teach me Een seal tomorrow. Tsunade hurriedly flipped through the new things she bought today and casually promised, I know, you've said it several times. When did you start to waste time like Shizen? All right. Naruto said, don't leave. After Naruto left, the smile on Tsunade's face was quickly replaced by a sad expression. She muttered to herself, Naruto is so interested in seals. Is it because he wants to learn Edo Tensei? But, with 30 days, I don't think Naruto can learn it even if he's a genius. Plus, the books on the forbidden part of seals need her approval to read. Tsunade shook her head, feeling that her worries were a little unnecessary. Then she began to deal with the things she bought today again. For the first time, she found that shopping was quite interesting in addition to gambling. But she didn't know that after Naruto returned to the store manager's house, he took out the Shinigami mask. Nine Tails was interested. Are you going to unlock this seal? Naruto wanted to unlock it, and then he could use the 4-symbol seal to seal the souls of the previous Naruto. He also planned to learn the 4-symbol seal, but when he thought of 4th Naruto, this body would feed back a very uncomfortable emotion. Although 4th Naruto wasn't his father in theory, Naruto thought about it and took it back again. He replied, I'm not ready yet, wait until I'm proficient in the 4-symbol seal and Edo Tensei. When Nine Tails heard that he couldn't unlock it, he lay down again in boredom. After he fused with the Earth attribute, he would unlock the Corpse Demon seal. He didn't know if he could fuse with the Earth attribute if he killed Kabuto. After all, that guy's medical ninjutsu was also very strong, and it was very likely to be of the Yang attribute. After putting the Shinigami mask back into the storage scroll, Naruto looked at the coffin in the corner. Chakra poured into the coffin, and the runes appeared. Then one of the runes changed under Naruto's will. Sleep. It felt a little early. Naruto went out of the bedroom and went to the study. Just as Naruto expected, Gurney was reading a book. Gurney, you don't need to use your legs, right? Naruto walked closer. Gurney was wary of Naruto. What are you going to do? Dismantle and upgrade. Gurney looked at Naruto with narrowed eyes and said, Are you sure you're not going to do something strange? Naruto's mouth twitched. What kind of strange things can he do with 2 wooden stakes? But it hurts to be doubted like this. Naruto turned and left. Gurney called out behind him, Where are you going? Don't you want my legs? Naruto rolled his eyes and said, Since you don't want to upgrade, I'll upgrade Little Gurney and Big Gurney. You don't need to use your legs anyway, so it doesn't make a difference whether you upgrade or not. Gurney used chakra to drive the wheelchair and caught up to Naruto. She sped up and stood in front of Naruto. No. You said you'd upgrade me first. Did he say that? Naruto felt his kidneys hurting. Are you sure? Gurney nodded repeatedly. Naruto sighed and crouched down to use Chakra's scalpel to remove the wheelchair. But just as she was about to remove Doguni's skirt, the girl suddenly shouted at the top of her lungs, "Molester!" MMP. I knew she wouldn't cooperate. Naruto really wanted to send Gurney flying with a kick. At this time, the other 4 girls came over to watch the show. Gurney looked pitiful. She pressed her skirt with one hand and hugged her chest with the other. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. He raised his leg and kicked. Get lost. Cow baby. The kick was very fast, but it was far from his full strength. He could withdraw it at any time. At this moment, Big Gurney hugged his chest and leaned against the wall. He didn't look like he was going to make a move. He said to Little Gurney, "I've been wanting to send her flying for a long time." Little Gurney agreed. Yes, send her flying. This girl is so lazy. She better break her wheelchair. Go, big brother Naruto. Gurney's wheelchair quickly moved back and dodged Naruto's attack. She didn't fight back. Instead, she turned her wheelchair and looked at the 2 girls who were cheering her on. She said sadly, "You're not on my side." Then, she started to cry. Naruto's body stiffened. This was the first time Gurney had cried since she came here. He suddenly felt that he had sinned. However, Big Gurney was still unmoved. He said mockingly, "Don't be fooled by her tears. It's just a change in the nature of the water element chakra." Naruto's mouth twitched. He felt really guilty. He skipped over Gurney and upgraded Gurney's arm first. Gurney was pleasantly surprised when he received his new arm. It's so flexible. It feels like a real arm. It's still lacking a sense of touch. If you can optimize the sense of touch, it'll be amazing. Naruto was stunned. Sense of touch? Then, he thought about it and nodded. I'll pay attention to that. Gurney waved his hand and said understandingly, "Don't worry too much. This is already very good." Gurney was full of curiosity. Is it really more flexible? Then, upgrade me too. Naruto ignored it. He was ready to upgrade Little Gurney. Gurney pouted. According to the order of my name, it should be me after Big Gurney, right? He continued to ignore it. Soon, Little Gurney was also upgraded. Gurney lifted her dress. She bit her lip and slowly pulled her knee-length snow-white dress up. She said softly, "It's my turn now, right?" Naruto looked up at the sky. He thought for a moment and replied, "I'll upgrade you when you're not so annoying anymore." "I'm going back to sleep." Gurney moved his wheelchair and chased after him. He imitated how Xia addressed him and begged, "Master, I'm sorry." The word "master" was very soft, but Naruto ran even faster. When they reached the bedroom, Gurney threatened, "If you dare to go in, I'll knock on the door for the whole night." Others might not be able to do such a thing, but Gurney would definitely do it. All right. Gurney was too big to be messed with. Naruto's liver hurt as he upgraded Guru's legs. They're really flexible. Gurney sighed in admiration and walked 2 steps on the floor. Then, he plopped back into his wheelchair. Naruto's eyelids twitched when he saw this. If he was so lazy, what was the point of upgrading his legs? Naruto turned around and was about to return to the bedroom when Gurney asked, "Master, can you modify my wheelchair?" Naruto rolled his eyes. "Speak properly." Gurney said coyly, "Onion." Naruto opened the door and closed it with a bang. Then, with a click, he locked the door from the inside. Gurney made a face at the door. "TSK, TSK, TSK, stingy." Chapter 204. Tsunade accepted Sakura Haruno as her apprentice, and Naruto began to learn the Yin Seal. A week passed, and in this week, Naruto learned the Yin Seal in only one day. To be more precise, he learned the theory in the morning, and started to practice it in the afternoon, and solved the problem before sunset. This was exactly what Tsunade expected. Tsunade felt her chest tighten. Is the Yin Seal too simple? Tsunade couldn't help but ask Sakura Haruno to learn the seal as well, so poor Sakura Haruno spent the next week in confusion. Tsunade gave her 3 books and told her to finish them in a week. Basic Sealing Technique, Intermediate Sealing Technique, Advanced Application Principles of Sealing Technique, Part 1. Sakura Haruno opened the first page of Basic Seal. When she was in the Ninja Academy, she was always a top student. At least, she was always first in the written exam, and she read a lot of books to enrich her knowledge. But when she opened the book, she felt like her brain was being ridiculed. This was a completely new language system, and it was a subject that was a combination of a new language system, mathematics, and so on. She didn't know how to describe it, and it was a jumbled mess of knowledge. In short, she couldn't understand it at all. But this was a task given to her by Naruto-sama. Perhaps this task was a test to see if she could officially become Tsunade's apprentice. If she couldn't understand it, she wouldn't read it? After experiencing the crazy psychological activities of burning the books, jumping off a building with the books, or burning herself with the books, Sakura Haruno decided to see if she could memorize the 3 books. If she couldn't understand it, she would memorize it. So Sakura Haruno spent a week memorizing the books. If she knew that Tsunade gave her such a ridiculous task because of that guy named Naruto, she would probably burn him in the middle of the night with a torch. Naruto, under Tsunade's supervision, successfully planted the Yin Seal seed in his body, and began his life of storing energy. Naruto finally realized that he underestimated the process of storing energy. It's true that he had a lot of chakra, but the Yin Seal was based on his physical condition, and it was a space that was independently created under the primitive rules. Simply put, the stronger the body, the larger the space after the formation. So, it was almost impossible to complete the basic process of storing energy in a short time and make the Yin Seal's mark appear. After all, even for him, there was a limit to how much chakra he could store every day. A week later, Naruto came to Naruto's office again. His face was no longer fleshy, but his mental state was good, and his eyes were bright. Tsunade frowned. She ordered, "For the next week, I forbid you from extracting chakra. Chakra is the combination of the humans, its can't overload as." Look, you haven't even grown a single strand of hair. If you continue to mess around, be careful that you won't be able to grow any hair in the future. Naruto touched his head and felt a chill in his heart. It's been more than a week since he unlocked the Yin Seal. Not a single strand of hair has grown out. It's over. At this time, Sakura Haruno knocked on the door and walked in. As soon as she appeared, everyone in the room was shocked. Although her hair was neatly combed, and her clothes were neat and tidy, her slightly sunken cheeks, and her panda eyes. What did this girl go through this week? Naruto thought back. Before he came to this world, he didn't ruin himself like this when he took the college entrance exam. Sakura Haruno held 3 books in her arms, respectfully came in front of Tsunade, and placed the 3 books on the desk with both hands. "Naruto-sama, I finished reading them." Naruto glanced at the 3 books. They were very familiar. It was the 3 books that he finished in 10 minutes. Could it be that this girl has been reading these 3 books for the past week? Then came Tsunade's question. Sakura Haruno answered more than a dozen questions fluently. Tsunade nodded with satisfaction. "It seems that you've learned these 3 books well, but you also have to pay attention to rest. Even if you crave knowledge, you can't tire your body out. You're currently enduring medical treatment. If you don't even know how to take care of your body, how can others rest assured that you'll receive treatment?" She craves knowledge? She craves knowledge, my ass. She craves sleep. Sakura Haruno respectfully responded, "Yes, I understand." Then, Tsunade sighed, "You're all good children, but you don't know how to take care of your body. You have to pay attention to this." "Well, I just asked you some simple questions. If there's anything you don't understand in these 3 books, you can ask me now, and I'll explain it to you. Sakura Haruno was silent with a conflicted expression on her face. Tsunade encouraged her, if there's anything, just ask. Are you embarrassed with Naruto here? Juno Sakura shook her head, hesitated for a while, and finally said, actually, I don't understand what's written. You don't understand? Tsunade was taken aback. She didn't understand what she meant and asked, how can that be? You answered very well just now. Don't be unconfident in yourself. Sakura Haruno shook her head again. I just memorized the books. Actually, I don't understand. Memorized? Naruto looked back at the 3 books. The 3 books added together were quite thick, and the knowledge in them was difficult to understand. Memorizing this kind of thing is equivalent to memorizing classical Chinese or a dictionary. This girl is worthy of being a top student. My sister is awesome. He couldn't help but say, things like knowledge, you can actually understand it after memorizing more. You can try memorizing the cursed dictionary. What is a cursed dictionary? It's similar to a plant dictionary. It's a reference book, and it's very thick. Naruto didn't have any bad intentions. He just felt that since Sakura Haruno was so knowledgeable, then if she memorized the cursed dictionary, then many things that she didn't understand would suddenly become clear. He was being kind. Sakura Haruno looked at Naruto blankly. Memorize? Although she didn't know what the cursed dictionary was, anything with the word dictionary was definitely not a good thing. Naruto, I didn't provoke you, did I? You'll be my senpai in the future. Is this how you treat your juniors? Wait, maybe Naruto was just joking. Well, this must be a joke. Naruto. Sama wouldn't give her such a ridiculous task. Hanafuma didn't even ask her to memorize the plant dictionary. While comforting herself, Sakura Haruno found that. Naruto, Sama's face was thinking. Her heart couldn't help but jump. What is Naruto, Sama thinking? Maybe he wants to invite us to dinner? Since I completed the task, I'm Naruto, Sama's apprentice, right? Then it's normal for the 3 of them to have a meal together. Tsunade said, the cursed dictionary is a good thing. It would be great if you could memorize it. Naruto, did you memorize it? Tsunade looked at Naruto. Naruto nodded and said, I also memorized the cursed dictionary before I really figured out many problems. Tsunade nodded and looked at Sakura Haruno. Then you should also memorize the cursed dictionary. It's not much, just a few tens of thousands of pages. Huh? Sakura Haruno felt like her world was broken. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? What tens of thousands of pages? Are you kidding me? Is that something a person can memorize? Sakura Haruno entered a state of confusion. Then she saw Tsunade take out a huge book 1/2 meter wide and 1 meter high from under the desk to test Naruto. The 2 of them asked and answered each other's questions in a very natural manner. But Sakura Haruno felt like she was living in a dream. What did Tsunade mean by 10,086? Did it have any special meaning? There was also 10,010, and Sakura Haruno saw Tsunade turning the pages, and the number on the footer was 10,010. Directly testing the page number to memorize knowledge? Can you be any more ridiculous? I must not have woken up yet. Actually, I just fell asleep because I was too tired from studying, and then I had a strange dream. Ha ha. Why am I not waking up from this dream? Tsunade tested Naruto with more than a dozen questions. Then she closed the book and nodded. You see, Naruto memorized it well, then you should also memorize it. Originally, this reference book was a gift for Naruto, but since you've already memorized it, it's useless. Sakura, take this book back and memorize it when you have nothing to do. Tsunade handed over the huge book with one hand, and Sakura Haruno took it numbly. So heavy. Then she picked it up and slapped it on her head. Bang. It's time to wake up. Sakura Haruno felt dizzy and fainted. Tsunade was shocked. What's going on? Naruto rubbed his chin and speculated, maybe the book was too heavy, and I used too much force when I took it, causing me to lose my balance and fall backwards, and I hit my head. Tsunade nodded, that makes sense, it seems like this girl's body is a bit weak, how about you let her practice with the hammer to train her strength? Although the body can't excessively pursue strength, it's not healthy to be weak. Right, isn't swinging the hammer a secret? Naruto shook his head, it's just swinging the hammer to train the body, there's nothing that can't be taught. Tsunade said happily, then it's settled, her body is too weak, she doesn't look like a disciple I taught. If Sakura Haruno knew that a new side quest was unlocked after she knocked herself out, what would she think? Naruto's office window, Shizen stood by the ventilation vent, as far away from the master and disciple as possible. Memorizing the curse dictionary? Is that something a human would do? She felt like she was the only person in this office with a normal mind. Then she lowered her head and looked at Tough, and added in her heart, and Tough. Tough, humph. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.